Chapter 3449. The appearance of young geniuses who were famous in the Devata realms attracted many people's attention. Of course, there were also many people who were not well known but were not weak. Few people knew them, so when they appeared, they were almost forgotten and did not attract any attention. Duan Lingtian was unaware that two of his acquaintances had come to participate in the Devata realms battle of the geniuses. He was unaware that most of the young geniuses who had come to participate in the Devata realms battle of the geniuses thought he was only here to watch the show. Most of them thought he was only slightly over 600 years old, so it was impossible for him to perform well in the Devata realms battle of the geniuses. As the saying went, there was no dispute. Where there were people, there would be disputes. In the Devata realms battle of the geniuses, there were disputes every few days. As long as no one died, the people from the heavenly palace of the primeval heaven, who were in charge of monitoring the Devata realms battle of the geniuses, would not interfere. Although most of the young geniuses here were younger than 1,000 years old, they were still top geniuses from all over the Devata realms. The strongest among them were comparable to a 5-star god of war. For this reason, the person in charge of monitoring the Devata realms battle of the heavenly palace of the primeval heaven was a 6-star god of war titled Celestial Emperor. Only a titled Celestial Emperor with the strength of a 6-star god of war would be able to suppress a group of young geniuses from all over the Devata realms. There's a young genius in our Jade Emperor heaven who's over 600 years old who passed the Title Temple's test and obtained the right to participate in the Devata realms battle of the geniuses. Is there anyone from the Lang Yuan heaven who's so young? A prodigy from the Jade Emperor heaven and a prodigy from the Lang Yuan heaven were bickering. In the end, the prodigy from the Jade Emperor heaven mentioned that there was a young prodigy in the Jade Emperor heaven who had passed the Title Temple's test and obtained the qualification to participate in the battle of the geniuses in the Devata realms at the age of 600. Humph! Lang Yuantian snorted coldly. Not to be outdone, he said. Who knows if the difficulty of the Jade Emperor Heaven's titled God Emperor Branch Hall's assessment is too low? A 600-year-old man actually passed the assessment. The test was too easy. The Jade Emperor sneered. Su Li's strength is ranked at the top among all of us who have passed the Title Temple's test. Do you really think he passed the test because it was easy? Do you want to spar with me? The battle intent in the Jade Emperor's eyes soared. Let's do it. Do you think I'm afraid of you? Just like that, Lang Yuantian and Jade Emperor Heaven's genius fought fiercely. In the end, the two of them were evenly matched, and neither was at a disadvantage. Their strength was close to that of a titled Celestial Emperor. This scene didn't surprise the onlookers. What surprised them more was that the genius from Jade Emperor Heaven actually said that there was a 600-year-old man who was stronger than him. His strength was close to that of a titled Celestial Emperor. If that person was stronger than him, did that person have to be a titled Celestial Emperor? A 600-year-old titled Celestial Emperor? Oh my God! Even in the history of the Devata realms, a titled Celestial Emperor, who's over 600 years old, is as rare as a phoenix's feather or a cheilant's horn. Really? When the news of a 600-year-old titled Celestial Emperor in the Jade Emperor heaven spread, it caused quite a stir. Many people remembered the name, Su Li. Su Li is only slightly over 600 years old, and he's already a titled Celestial Emperor? Duan Lingtian heard many people talking about Su Li as soon as he walked out of the wooden house. A genius from the Jade Emperor heaven? It seems like Su Li has improved a lot over the years. Duan Lingtian shook his head and smiled. It was not difficult for him to guess the genius from the Jade Emperor heaven was his good friend, Su Li. Previously, when Duan Lingtian visited the Thousand Tribulations Sword sect in the Jade Emperor heaven's Nando territory, Su Li had made a breakthrough. Moreover, with the Thousand Tribulations Sword sect's foundation, it would not be difficult for Su Li to rise if they nurtured him. Moreover, before he left, he had heard from Zhuge Feng, the leader of the Thousand Tribulations Sword sect's Ganjiang progeny, that the Thousand Tribulations Sword sect planned to create a powerhouse who could lead the sect to glory. The person who was chosen was none other than Su Li. Everyone had high hopes for Su Li. The Thousand Tribulation Sword sect hoped that Su Li would be able to defeat the Heavenly Emperor of the Jade Emperor Heaven and replace him. Only then would the Thousand Tribulation Sword sect be able to rise in the Jade Emperor Heaven. At this moment, Duan Lingtian's arrival attracted many people's attention. That's Duan Lingtian? He's the true disciple of the legendary Heavenly Emperor of the Solitary Destructive Heaven? He's handsome and has an extraordinary bearing. However, what can he achieve at the age of 600? Both of them are over 600 years old, but I'm afraid Su Li from the Jade Emperor Heaven can easily crush him. Many people compared Su Li to Duan Lingtian. Based on their words, they felt Duan Lingtian was far inferior to Su Li. However, Duan Lingtian did not care about this at all. He asked around and confirmed the location of the people from the Tidal Temple's branch in the Jade Emperor Heaven before he made his way there. All the people from the Tidal Temple's branch in the Jade Emperor Heaven were gathered together. When Duan Lingtian arrived, many people from the Jade Emperor Heaven stared at him. They were not blind. It was not difficult for them to figure out the purple-clad young man's identity when they heard the voice from afar. The purple-clad young man was the only true disciple of the legendary Heavenly Emperor of the Solitary Destructive Heaven, Feng Qingyang. Although the Jade Emperor Heaven had a 600-year-old titled Celestial Emperor, they did not think the purple-clad young man was comparable to the legendary Heavenly Emperor of the Jade Emperor Heaven. After all, in the history of the Devata realms, there were very few titled Celestial Emperors who were as young as Duan Lingtian. It was rare for two titled Celestial Emperors to exist in the same era. May I ask where Su Li is? Duan Lingtian asked politely with a smile on his face as he looked at a young genius from the Jade Emperor Heaven. You're looking for Su Li? The young genius from the Jade Emperor Heaven frowned slightly. Then he shook his head and said, Duan Lingtian, I know you're the only true disciple of the Heavenly Emperor of the Solitary Destructive Heaven. You're feeling indignant after being told that you're weaker than Su Li. However, I advise you that it's best that you don't do that. You'll only bring shame to yourself. Su Li's strength isn't as simple as a new titled Celestial Emperor. Based on his words, it was clear he was trying to dissuade Duan Lingtian. Upon hearing the young genius's words, Duan Lingtian knew the young genius had misunderstood him. His eyes lit up when he heard the young genius's words. He's not as simple as a new titled Celestial Emperor? Didn't that mean that Su Li's strength had already reached the level of a 2-star war god? You've misunderstood me. Duan Lingtian shook his head as he looked at the young genius from the Jade Emperor Heaven and said, I'm not here to spar with Su Li. Su Li is my friend. Su Li is your friend. The young genius from the Jade Emperor Heaven was shocked by Duan Lingtian's words. He did not expect Su Li would be acquainted with the only true disciple of the legendary Heavenly Emperor of the Solitary Destructive Heaven. Moreover, Duan Lingtian even claimed Su Li was his friend. Naturally, the young genius from the Jade Emperor Heaven knew Su Li would not lie about being his friend. Su Li's talent and strength might be higher than his, but his status meant that the current Su Li, and even the future Su Li, would have to look up to him. With the young genius from the Jade Emperor Heaven leading the way, Duan Lingtian soon met Su Li. Duan Lingtian, I heard you were here as soon as I arrived. Su Li laughed heartily when he saw Duan Lingtian. However, I heard from them that you've been in closed-door cultivation since the moment you arrived, so I didn't disturb you. Let's talk inside. Under the shocked gazes of the young geniuses from the Jade Emperor Heaven, Su Li led Duan Lingtian into his wooden hut. It seems like Su Li and Duan Lingtian aren't ordinary friends. That's right. It feels like they've been good friends for many years. How does Su Li know such a person? While the young geniuses from the Jade Emperor Heaven were discussing among themselves, Duan Lingtian and Su Li had already entered the wooden hut. The wooden hut was very spacious. After both of them entered, they sat at the wooden table in front of the bed. Su Li, it's been a few hundred years since we last met. Duan Lingtian sighed emotionally. Have you been well all these years? I've been well. Su Li nodded with a smile. All these years, the sect has spared no effort in nurturing me. However, it's also because of this that I feel a lot of pressure. Because I know that they have high hopes for me. When Su Li reached the end of his sentence, the smile on his face turned bitter. Now you should know their goal, right? Duan Lingtian asked. During his last visit to the Thousand Tribulations Sword sect, he learned from Zhuge Feng, the leader of the Ganjiang progeny, about the sect's future prospects. He learned that Zhuge Feng had high hopes for Su Li to defeat the current Heavenly Emperor of the Jade Emperor Heaven. However, at that time, Su Li was unaware of this. Even Zhuge Feng had reminded him not to tell Su Li about this for the time being, so that Su Li would not feel pressured. Based on your words, you already knew about this? The bitter smile on Su Li's face widened when he heard Duan Lingtian's question. Duan Lingtian smiled awkwardly. I already knew about it the last time we met. However, since the person who told me about this has told me not to tell you, it's not convenient for me to tell you. Moreover, I'm afraid it might affect you if I tell you. Su Li shook his head and sighed. There's no turning back now. The Thousand Tribulations Sword sect has invested too much in me. I can only help them achieve their goals according to their vision of the future. You can do it. Duan Lingtian said with a smile. Perhaps, I'll have a Heavenly Emperor as my friend one day. Chapter 3450. I still have a long way to go. Upon hearing Duan Lingtian's words, the bitter smile on Su Li's face widened. Then, as though he had recalled something, he looked at Duan Lingtian and said enviously, no matter how hard I work, I'll only be able to become a Heavenly Emperor of the Jade Emperor Heaven. However, you're the only true disciple of the legendary Heavenly Emperor of the Solitary Destructive Heaven. Do you know how many people envy you? They say even if you're a blockhead, with the help of the legendary Heavenly Emperor, you'll definitely be enlightened. After all, the legendary Heavenly Emperor is the fastest to rise among all the Heavenly Emperors in the Devata realms. Not only that, but his rise is legendary as well. Su Li said. Before Duan Lingtian could reply, Su Li looked at Duan Lingtian expectantly and said, Duan Lingtian, I'm a big fan of your master. When will you bring me to meet the legendary Heavenly Emperor? I've always wanted to meet him. He's from the same mundane realm as me, and he's so accomplished in just 10,000 years. Due to his relationship with Duan Lingtian, Su Li knew Feng Qingyang, the Heavenly Emperor of the Solitary Destructive Heaven, was Feng Qingyang, the Sword Saint of the Fog Rain progeny, the first absolute of the Seven Absolutes sect. As a sword celestial, he had an inexplicable sense of admiration for Feng Qingyang. I'll ask my master if he's free now. Upon hearing Su Li's words, Duan Lingtian sent a message to his master Feng Qingyang. Then he smiled and said, I've mentioned you to my master before. He's very impressed with your innate talent and fortuitous encounters. How can I compare to you? Su Li smiled wryly. I was brought to the Thousand Tribulations Sword sect from the mundane realm, but you ascended to the Devata realm on your own. Su Li was very clear about his and Duan Lingtian's encounters. Compared to Duan Lingtian, he was more like a flower in a greenhouse. Duan Lingtian had truly relied on himself to get to where he was today. As for Duan Lingtian, he had gone to the Thousand Tribulations Sword sect as soon as he had arrived in the Devata realms to receive the best training. Although he occasionally went out to train, he was mostly protected, so he did not feel threatened at all. Unlike Duan Lingtian, who had come all this way, once he encountered danger, there was only a slim chance of survival. Master wants us to go now. Duan Lingtian quickly received a message from his master Feng Qingyang. He immediately stood up and said to Su Li with a smile. Hearing this, Su Li's eyes immediately lit up. At the same time, a hint of nervousness involuntarily appeared on his face. He was clearly a little nervous. Duan Lingtian, do I need to tidy up again? As he spoke, Su Li looked at what he was wearing and asked nervously. Duan Lingtian shook his head helplessly when he saw Su Li's anxious expression. Su Li master is very easygoing. There's no need for you to worry too much. Even so, I can't help but feel nervous. Su Li smiled wryly. After all, he's an invincible sword celestial, a legendary heavenly emperor. Before entering the Azura Hell, one of the 7 deadliest places in the Devata realms, Feng Qingyang was widely acknowledged as an invincible sword celestial in the Solitary Destructive Heaven. However, after coming out of the Azura Hell, Feng Qingyang was widely acknowledged as an invincible sword celestial in the Devata realms. There was no sword celestial in the Devata realms who was a match for him. Naturally, many people said that since Feng Qingyang was suspected to have attained godhood, he should not be called a sword celestial, but a sword god instead. However, no matter what, Feng Qingyang was like a flag in the eyes of the sword celestials in the Devata realms. As one of the sword celestials in the Devata realms, Suli could not help but feel anxious when he learned he was about to meet the invincible sword celestial. It was only when he saw Feng Qingyang that Suli's mood gradually calmed down. "Greetings, Senior Feng Qingyang." Suli bowed respectfully at Feng Qingyang. Feng Qingyang nodded and smiled at Suli. "Suli, I've heard about you from Little Tian. You're not simple to be able to come so far after leaving your hometown, the Saint Province realm." In the history of the Saint Province realm, there had been many people who had ascended to the Devata realm. However, most of them had died in accidents after ascending to the Devata realms. Even if they did not die, they did not accomplish much. Only a few of them managed to make a name for themselves. In the past, when Feng Qingyang had just ascended to the Devata realms, he did not have such a feeling. He had met many people, and met many people from various mundane realms. But he had never heard of anyone who was extraordinary and came from the Saint Province realm. Naturally, he could understand this. After all, there were many mundane realms. The Saint Province realm was not considered a large mundane realm among the mundane realms. After all, the Saint Province realm had Duanling Tian, and Suli. There were many mundane realms like the Saint Province realm, but until now, there were no outstanding people in the mundane realms. Among the Devata realms, the most famous large-scale mundane realms were the Yanhuang realm. For example, the powerful titled celestial emperors, and many powerful forces, in the Jade Emperor Heaven, were from Yanhuang realm. Even the heavenly emperor of the Jade Emperor Heaven was from the Yanhuang plane. Apart from the Yanhuang realm, there were several other mundane realms as well. Many powerful figures and forces had emerged one after another. Not only that, but they were also deeply rooted in the Devata realms. "Senior Feng Qingyang, you must be joking." Suli smiled wryly when he heard Feng Qingyang's praise. "I'm just lucky. When I was still in the Saint Province realm, I accidentally went to Yanhuang realm and obtained the legacy of a senior from the Thousand Tribulations sword sect. Then, I was brought to the Thousand Tribulations sword sect to be nurtured. If it weren't for that, I wouldn't have been able to achieve much even if I ascended to the Devata realms on my own. I'm not like you and Duanling Tian, Senior Feng Qingyang. Both of you relied on your own strength to reach where you are today." Suli sighed. "Suli, that's not right." Feng Qingyang shook his head and said, "Fortuitous encounters are also part of one's strength. There are so many people in Yanhuang realm. Why did you, who's not from Yanhuang realm, obtain the legacy of a senior from the Thousand Tribulations sword sect in the Jade Emperor Heaven? This is your luck, your fate, and your strength. You've come so far, but don't tell me you still can't see that luck is also a part of strength." Feng Qingyang replied with a question. Before Suli could reply, he continued to say, "Moreover, the reason I was able to make a name for myself when I ascended to the Devata realms was because I came across a few sword celestial relics and obtained some fortuitous encounters that allowed me to perfect my sword Dao. If it weren't for that luck, I wouldn't be where I am today." Suli nodded when he heard Feng Qingyang's words. Realization dawned on him as he said, "Thank you for your reminder, Senior Feng Qingyang. I understand now." "All right." Feng Qingyang nodded. Then, he turned to Suli and said, "If you're free before the Devata realm's battle of the geniuses, you can stay by my side so I can observe your sword techniques." "Thank you, Senior Feng Qingyang." Suli was overjoyed. He knew that the legendary heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven was obviously trying to give him some pointers by saying this. Duan Lingtian's eyes lit up as well. He quickly thanked Feng Qingyang. "Thank you, Master." Naturally, he knew that the reason why his master treated Suli so well was mostly because of him. After all, Suli was a good friend of his. Su Li was allowed by Feng Qingyang to cultivate with him. Duan Lingtian did not disturb them and returned to his wooden house. However, less than 2 days after he returned, he received a message. Duan Lingtian, are you here? To Duan Lingtian, this voice seemed a little distant. It was familiar yet unfamiliar. However, he quickly confirmed the identity of the person who had sent the message. Where are you? Duan Lingtian asked. I'm on my way to the heavenly palace. Duan Lingtian replied. The Devata realm's battle of the geniuses? Duan Lingtian asked again. Yes. Duan Lingtian replied again. Let's talk when we arrive. Duan Lingtian's eyes lit up immediately. Apart from Su Li, Duan Lingtian was also worried about another person who might come to the heavenly palace of the primeval heaven to participate in the Devata realm's battle of the geniuses. That person was none other than Ling Jueyan. Ling Jueyan was one of his few friends. Moreover, they had gone through life and death situations together. Although he had not known Ling Jueyan for as long as Su Li, he still regarded Ling Jueyan as an important friend. After so many years, Duan Lingtian finally received a message from Ling Jueyan. Moreover, Ling Jueyan was also from the primeval heaven and was on his way to the heavenly palace of the primeval heaven to participate in the Devata realm's battle of the geniuses, held by the tidal temple every 1,000 years. It's been so many years. I wonder how strong he is now. Duan Lingtian's eyes flashed as he thought curiously in his heart. At the same time, he contacted Huang the sword soul of the 7 orifices exquisite sword. Huang Ling Jueyan is on his way to participate in the Devata realm's battle of the geniuses. Although Huang had acknowledged Duan Lingtian as her master, she would only obey Duan Lingtian's orders. However, when she heard Duan Lingtian mention Ling Jueyan, her voice did not change at all. She only replied indifferently, "It's good that he's here. This means he's improved a lot over the years." As soon as Huang finished speaking, a voice rang from outside. Duan Lingtian, come out. If it was a normal voice, the soundproof formation in the wooden house would have blocked it out. However, this voice was transmitted through the divine consciousness, so Duan Lingtian could hear it clearly. Duan Lingtian frowned. Who is this person? Based on the voice, he did not recognize this person at all. Chapter 3451. It was impossible for him not to go out since the newcomer's tone was unfriendly. If he did not go out, his cultivation would be affected. Creak. After Duan Lingtian pushed open the door and walked out, he noticed that many gazes were converged on him. Moreover, before his own wooden house, there was a young man wearing a blue robe with golden edges standing there. This young man had a tall and sturdy figure, a handsome appearance, and a pair of tiger-like eyebrows that emitted a dignified aura. Presently, he was staring at Duan Lingtian as he asked indifferently, "You're Duan Lingtian? The only true disciple of Feng Qingyang, the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven? Is there a reason you're looking for me?" Duan Lingtian asked indifferently as he looked at the young man. Duan Lingtian was puzzled by the young man's hostility. After all, he did not know this young man at all. "I'm Tong Tu, the 4th true disciple of the heavenly emperor of the Xianyuan heaven. I'm here with my master to participate in the Devata realm's battle of the geniuses." The burly young man looked at Duan Lingtian and said indifferently, "I'm here to spar with you. I'm curious what kind of true disciple the legendary heavenly emperor from the solitary destructive heaven, whom even my master admits is inferior to, has accepted?" Duan Lingtian could sense the young man's hostility. Although the young man's tone was calm, he could sense the change in the young man's emotions. "I'm only slightly over 700 years old. I'm not much older than you, so I'm not taking advantage of you," Tong Tu continued to say. At this moment, the onlookers were in an uproar. I was wondering who dared to provoke Duan Lingtian. As it turns out, it's the true disciple of the heavenly emperor of the Xianyuan heaven. I know Tong Tuesday. He's the 4th true disciple of the heavenly emperor of the Xianyuan heaven. His cultivation base was close to becoming a titled celestial emperor a few decades ago. Now that he's over 700 years old, it's likely that he's already a titled celestial emperor. Even if he hasn't become a titled celestial emperor yet, I'm sure he won't be a match for anyone below the level of a titled celestial emperor. Speaking of which, the heavenly emperor of Xianyuan heaven is also a remarkable figure. Most importantly, he's also a powerful sword celestial. For this reason, after the rise of the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven, Feng Qingyang, many people compared the two of them to each other. It's said that both of them had sparred before, and their strengths were on par. That's all in the past. Ever since the legendary heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven came out of the Azura Hell, one of the 7 deadliest places in the Devata realms, his strength has already surpassed the heavenly emperor of the Xianyuan heaven. Perhaps, the true disciple of the heavenly emperor of the Xianyuan heaven isn't convinced of his master's strength. That's why he challenged the true disciple of the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven to prove that his master's disciple is stronger. Isn't he bullying us? Even if he's not much older than Duanling Tian. When did he become a disciple of the heavenly emperor of the Xianyuan heaven? And when did Duanling Tian become a disciple of the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven? Based on what I know, Tong Tu has been in the heavenly palace of the Xianyuan heaven since he was young. As for Duanling Tian, he only met the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven, Feng Qingyang, about 100 years ago. The onlookers whispered among themselves. They did not think Tong Tu was taking advantage of Duanling Tian by challenging Duanling Tian, just because the age gap between them was not big. What a joke! Tong Tu had been cultivating with the heavenly emperor of the Xianyuan heaven since he was young. Duanling Tian, on the other hand, had only met the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven when he was 500 years old. How could Tong Tu be so shameless as to say he was not taking advantage of Duanling Tian? Duanling Tian won't accept the duel, right? Soon after, more and more people shifted their attention to Duanling Tian's reply to Tong Tuesday. Most of them were certain Duanling Tian would not accept the duel, since they were certain Duanling Tian would be humiliated if he accepted the duel. Only an idiot would be humiliated. Duanling Tian had a good reason for not accepting the duel. There was no need for him to worry about embarrassing his master, the legendary heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven. Duanling Tian, don't tell me you don't have the guts to accept the duel? With Tong Tu's hearing, it was only natural that he heard the whispers around him. He frowned. Aren't these fellows looking for an excuse for Duanling Tian by saying that? Duanling Tian, although I grew up in the heavenly palace of the Xianyuan heaven, I only started cultivating under my master when I was 300 years old. Tong Tu looked at Duanling Tian and said indifferently, "If you think I'm taking advantage of you, we can have a duel. I won't use my celestial weapon." A commotion broke out as soon as Tong Tu finished speaking. Before Duanling Tian could reply, the onlookers began to whisper among themselves again. Tong Tu said he won't use his celestial weapon? Isn't he a little too arrogant? Isn't he underestimating his opponent? Nobody expected Tong Tu would dare to say that he would not use his celestial weapon in a duel with Duanling Tian. Upon hearing Tong Tu's words, the onlookers began to realize something. Tong Tu was most likely a titled celestial emperor now. Duanling Tian could not help but laugh when he heard Tong Tu's words. "What are you laughing at?" Tong Tu's expression darkened. "What? Are you trying to hide your guilt and cowardice by laughing? I've already made such a concession. And yet, you're still afraid to duel with me? Humph. You're a disgrace to your master, Feng Qingyang." At the end of his sentence, Tong Tu snorted coldly and said disdainfully, "Do you really want to duel with me?" Duanling Tian asked as he looked at Tong Tu indifferently. "Do you think I'm joking with you in front of so many people?" Tong Tu sneered. As soon as Tong Tu's words left his mouth, Duanling Tian narrowed his eyes. In the next instant, he vanished into thin air. Bang! Before the onlookers could react, a loud noise resonated in their ears. At the same time, they discovered Duanling Tian had appeared at the spot where Tong Tu was standing earlier. Tong Tu was sent flying like an arrow that had left its bow. Blarg! Tong Tu's aura was weak, and he was in a wretched state. He could not help but throw up a mouthful of blood. He only managed to regain his balance after flying for 100 meters. However, his expression was unsightly as he glared at Duan Lingtian. Despicable! How dare you, the true disciple of the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven, sneak attack me? Before Duan Lingtian could reply, Tong Tu continued to say, I'll teach you a lesson during the Devata realm's battle of the geniuses. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. The onlookers were stunned by Tong Tu's actions. He's too thick-skinned, isn't he? At this moment, everyone could see that Duan Lingtian's strength was not inferior to Tong Tuesday. At the very least, he was on par with Tong Tuesday otherwise. How could he injure Tong Tu before Tong Tu could react? It was obvious Tong Tu had noticed this as well. That was why he had left in a hurry. Even if Tong Tu was at his peak, he would not be able to defeat Duan Lingtian, let alone Tong Tu, who had been injured by Duan Lingtian due to his carelessness. If you were in Duan Lingtian's place earlier, would you be able to react in time if you were in his place? Among the crowd of young geniuses, one of them asked softly. Most of the onlookers shook their heads when they heard this question. I'm almost certain the true disciple of the legendary heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven is a titled celestial emperor. Another 600-year-old titled celestial emperor? To think that we thought that he had a good master, and that he was just a mediocre person. Why do I suddenly feel like my face is burning? What a slap in the face. Like I said, the legendary genius of the solitary destructive heaven is a brilliant figure. So many peerless geniuses wanted to be his disciple, but he didn't accept them. How could he accept a mediocre person as his true disciple just because of fate? You didn't say that earlier, right? Brother, can you not embarrass me? When Duan Lingtian turned around and returned to the wooden house, the group of young geniuses outside confirmed one thing. Duan Lingtian was a titled celestial emperor. Similar to Su Li from the Jade Emperor Heaven, Duan Lingtian was a titled celestial emperor who was only slightly over 600 years old. Even though this news started to spread in a small circle, it still caused quite a stir. Tong Tu, the fourth true disciple of the heavenly emperor of the Xianyuan heaven, did not return to his wooden house after he was severely injured. Instead, he went to look for his third senior brother, the most outstanding person among the young geniuses from the heavenly palace of the Xianyuan heaven. Yu Dongfang. Yu Dongfang was more than 900 years old. He was known as a 3-star god of war in the 9 Serenities battlefield. Currently, many people suspected he was at least a 4-star god of war. Third senior brother. I went to look for Duan Lingtian, the true disciple of the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven. Tong Tu lowered his head in front of Yu Dongfang like a child who had been wronged. You're severely injured. Yu Dongfang was a young man in a black and gray robe. He had a medium build and was half a head shorter than Tong Tuesday. However, when he stood there, the cold aura he exuded was superior to Tong Tu's. He had an ordinary face, but his eyes seemed to be glowing with a strange light, making it easy for people to be attracted to him. He sneak attacked me, Tong Tu said with a hint of dissatisfaction. Since he managed to injure you so severely, it means he's not any weaker than you. Yu Dongfang glanced at Tong Tu indifferently and said, Let me ask you this. If he's not as strong as a titled celestial emperor, can he injure you even if he sneak attacked you? No. Tong Tu smiled wryly. Tong Tu smiled bitterly. He was naturally aware of this, but it was exactly because of this that he was unwilling to accept this. He was severely injured by Yu Dongfang's sneak attack. If Yu Dongfang was stronger than him, he would not mind admitting defeat. However, if Yu Dongfang was only as strong as him, it would be embarrassing for him to be injured by Yu Dongfang's sneak attack. Yu Dongfang shook his head as he said, He's more than 600 years old, and his strength is on par with yours. Moreover, it's said that this true disciple of Heavenly Emperor Feng Qingyang only met Feng Qingyang for the first time 100 years ago, and cultivated under Heavenly Emperor Feng Qingyang. Yu Dongfang shook his head as he spoke. Unfortunately, he's still too young. Otherwise, he's qualified to be my opponent. Chapter 3452. News of Duan Lingtian injuring Tong Tu, the fourth true disciple of the heavenly emperor of the Xian Yuan heaven, with just a single move spread like wildfire. The group of young geniuses from the various Devata realms were not the only ones who received the news. Even the high-ranking officials from the tidal temple's branches and the heavenly emperors of the various Devata realms received the news. If it was an ordinary person, it would not have attracted so much attention. However, the main character of this matter was Duan Lingtian, the only true disciple of the legendary heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven, Feng Qingyang. The young geniuses were curious about Duan Lingtian's talent and ability to gain the favor of the legendary heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven. On the other hand, the high-ranking officials from the tidal temple and the heavenly palaces in the Devata realms were curious as to why the legendary heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven would suddenly accept a disciple who was unknown to them. Apart from the people from the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven, the heavenly emperor of the boundless heaven was not surprised by this. The boundless heaven was the Devata realm where the heavenly pool palace, a heaven-grade force, was located. The heavenly emperor of the boundless heaven was the grandfather of Yu Fengyu, the palace master of the heavenly pool palace. For this reason, the heavenly emperor of the boundless heaven knew Duan Lingtian was as strong as a titled celestial emperor. After all, Lei Ying, the merciless celestial emperor of the heavenly pool palace, had suffered a loss at the hands of Duan Lingtian. After learning that Duan Lingtian was the true disciple of Feng Qingyang, the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven, the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven, he had learned more about Duan Lingtian from his grandson. It's normal. For this reason, the heavenly emperor of the boundless heaven thought it was normal for Duan Lingtian to injure Tong Tu, who was caught off guard. However, the others did not think so. The heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven, Feng Qingyang, would either not accept a disciple or accept a monster as his disciple. Even Feng Qingyang himself at this age most likely did not have this kind of achievement. With the talent and comprehension of Feng Qingyang as a successor disciple, under the guidance and nurturing of Feng Qingyang in the future, he would definitely be the second Feng Qingyang. In fact, he might even surpass his master. Duan Lingtian was unaware of all this. He cultivated while waiting for Ling Juyan's arrival. "We're here." Duan Lingtian only stepped out of the wooden house when he received a message from Ling Juyan. He saw Ling Juyan once again. Ling Juyan was dressed the same as before. His appearance hadn't changed much, but the aura between his brows was clearly more mature. Clearly, the experience of the past few hundred years had changed him a lot. "Where did you come from?" Duan Lingtian asked curiously when he brought Ling Juyan back to his wooden house. Although he had received a message from Ling Juyan not long ago, he did not ask where Ling Juyan came from. He wanted to ask Ling Juyan about it first. "I arrived in the primeval heaven a long time ago. As for which Devata realm I came from, I came from Feng Qingtian's place." Ling Juyan replied. "Did you come with the people from Feng Qingtian's heavenly palace?" Duan Lingtian asked again. In his opinion, with Ling Juyan's talent and comprehension, it would not be difficult for him to enter Feng Qingtian's heavenly palace and become a disciple of Feng Qingtian. "No." Ling Juyan shook his head. "I went to Feng Qingtian's tidal temple and passed the test to qualify for the Devata realm's battle of geniuses. You know who I am? I'm a native of the realms of gods. I have no intention of becoming a disciple in the Devata realms. Ever since I was young, I've always been surrounded by god-level powerhouses. Even the servants in my clan are god-level powerhouses. Do you think it's possible for me to become a disciple of someone from the Devata realms? Even the heavenly emperors of Devata realms might not be qualified to be my master, let alone a heavenly emperor who has not attained godhood." Ling Juyan said haughtily. As the young master of the Ling clan, one of the most powerful clans in the divine offering land, Ling Juyan had his own pride. Apart from his own pride, his clan's pride made it impossible for him to become a disciple of someone from the Ling clan. Even if his clan had been annihilated, his clan was not. However, they arrived before me. I told them I'd come by myself. Yes. When I arrived, the vice palace masters of Feng Qingtian's title temple, and a direct disciple of the heavenly emperor of the primeval heaven, came to pick me up. Ling Juyan said, "It seems like you're quite strong. Even the vice palace masters of Feng Qingtian's title temple are willing to give you face." Duan Lingtian was surprised. How could they not give me face? Ling Juyan smiled faintly. Including me, there are 17 people from Feng Qingtian's title temple who passed the test to participate in the Devata Realm's Battle of Geniuses. To be honest, even if they join forces, I'm confident I can kill all of them. At most, I'll only be injured. Ling Juyan's tone was filled with pride again. You're not humble at all. Duan Lingtian shook his head. Duan Lingtian, you're doing well as well. Ling Juyan said with a smile. On my way here, I heard Wei Qi, the vice palace masters of Feng Qingtian's title temple, and Wei Qi, the true disciple of the heavenly emperor of the primeval heaven, talking about you. They said you're at least a titled celestial emperor. However, their estimation of your strength is too low. Since I've achieved so much, even if you're not as strong as me, you shouldn't be that much weaker than me. Ling Juyan smiled brightly. Not as strong as you? Upon hearing Ling Juyan's words, Duan Lingtian looked at him meaningfully. It seems like you're really confident in your strength. In that case, do you want to find a place to spar with me? If it was 2 weeks ago, I would have agreed to your request. However, I've recently gained some insights that I need time to digest before the Devata Realm's Battle of the Geniuses begins. Ling Juyan shook his head and said, If you want to spar with me, you'd better wait until the Devata Realm's Battle of the Geniuses begins. Moreover, I heard the Devata Realm's Battle of the Geniuses will begin in 6 months. Duan Lingtian had learned about this from his master, Feng Qingyang, so he was not surprised by Ling Juyan's words. You should return to the Devata Realm's Battle of the Geniuses. I'll spar with you again, Duan Lingtian said with a smile. There's no rush. Ling Juyan took a deep breath and said, Duan Lingtian, I'd like to meet Sister Huang. Upon hearing Ling Juyan's words, Duan Lingtian could not help but smile wryly. Do you really want to meet her? You'll be disappointed. I'm relieved to hear that. A rare smile appeared on Ling Juyan's cold face. It seems like Sister Huang has completely merged with your divine artifact. As a native of the realms of gods, Ling Juyan, naturally, knew what would happen when the soul of another divine artifact merged with another person's divine artifact. In the end, Duan Lingtian asked Huang to meet Ling Juyan. Sister Huang, I know I don't mean much to you, but I want to tell you that I didn't disappoint you. All these years, I didn't slack off at all. When Ling Juyan looked at Huang, not only did his cold face soften, but his eyes were also filled with emotions. Unfortunately, in response to his heartfelt words, Huang only responded with a faint "oh." After Ling Juyan left, Duan Lingtian looked at Huang and said with a wry smile on his face, Huang you don't have to be so cold. After all, your former master is his sister. As for him, you watched him grow up. Duan Lingtian said, Master, I know what you mean. Huang shook her head and said, But right now Huang emotions aren't completely under my control. I have memories of what you said, but in those memories, I feel like I'm more of a bystander. Even if those memories are my own. Right now, I only know that you are my master. For you, I can do anything. Even if I turn into ashes, I will have no regrets. As for the rest, whether it is people or things, they are not important. Huang said, This was the fate of a divine artifact's soul. All right. Although Duan Lingtian felt a little helpless, he knew this wasn't something he could control. Of course, he could order Huang to treat Ling Juyan better. But even so, her emotions were still stiff and would only have the opposite effect. Let's go back, Huang. After sending Huang back, Duan Lingtian took out the formation disc his master Feng Qingyang had given him and activated it with immortal crystals. Then he opened the small world in his body to communicate with his family. After his master's reminder last time, he closed the small world in his body. At the same time, her master had also given her a square disc array. Inside it was a very ingenious array that could conceal one's aura. Even if a divine spirit realm master's powerful divine sense could pass through the array, he would still be able to sense something before passing through the array. That little bit of time was enough for him to close the small world in his body. Therefore, with the formation disk, he did not have to worry about the secret of his small world being discovered. However, at this moment, most of his family members in Duan Lingtian's little world were cultivating. Only his father and mother had stopped cultivating and were chatting. After chatting with his parents for a while, Duan Lingtian closed the small world in his body again. At the same time, he began to wait for the Devata realm's battle of the geniuses to begin in half a year. Naturally, Duan Lingtian did not plan to slack off in the remaining half a year. He continued to deepen his understanding of the sword Dao that his master Feng Qingyang had taught him by fusing the profundity of the law of space into it. Due to the supreme powerhouse divinity in his possession, Duan Lingtian made progress almost every day. In just half a month, he had made significant progress. Time continued to pass quietly. Half a year passed in just a blink of an eye. The Devata realm's battle of the geniuses was about to begin. In the literature hall, Chapter 3453, the Devata realm's battle of the geniuses was held every 1,000 years in the heavenly palaces of the various Devata realms. This time, it was the heavenly palace of the primeval heavens turn to host the battle of the geniuses. Since the heavenly palace of the primeval heaven would host the battle of the geniuses every 81,000 years, the heavenly palace of the primeval heaven had prepared a venue for the battle of the geniuses. However, the venue was usually sealed off by a formation and would only be opened when the battle of the geniuses began. The venue had a history similar to the battle of the geniuses in the Devata realms. At that time, the heavenly emperor of the primeval heaven was different from the current heavenly emperor of the primeval heaven. This venue is quite big. The people from the heavenly palace of the primeval heaven arranged for the young geniuses from the various Devata realms, including Duan Lingtian, to be seated in the spectator seats. There were so many seats that even after the young geniuses from the various Devata realms had taken their seats, there was still a large empty space. At the back of the auditorium, there was a small floating island with some tables and chairs. In front of the table stood a delicate and beautiful maid, holding a teapot in her hand and teacups on the table. The seats on the floating islands must be provided by the heavenly palace of the primeval heaven to the high-ranking officials of the heavenly palaces and the title temple's branches in the Devata realms. It was not difficult for the young geniuses present on the scene to figure this out. Although most of the young geniuses had arrived, the high-ranking officials from the heavenly palaces and the title temple's branches had yet to arrive. Duan Lingtian, Su Li, and Ling Juyin sat together. At this moment, Su Li and Ling Juyin had gotten to know each other. Both of them were straightforward people, so it did not take long for them to get along. The other three young geniuses from the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven, Zhang Tianyu, Wang Ting, and He Jianyi, sat behind Duan Lingtian. Their gazes were filled with complicated emotions, as though they were meeting Duan Lingtian for the first time. Among the young geniuses who participated in the battle of the geniuses in the Devata realms, they were the first to express disdain for Duan Lingtian. Even the fact that Duan Lingtian was only 600 years old was spread by them. It could be said that it was the three of them who caused the group of young geniuses to think that Duan Lingtian was just a mediocre person. However, when Tong Tu, the fourth true disciple of the heavenly emperor of Xianyuan heaven, went to challenge Duan Lingtian and was severely injured by Duan Lingtian, everyone realized something was amiss. Although Duan Lingtian was only 600 years old, he was already a top-tier titled celestial emperor. It did not matter if he was titled or not. His strength was on par with the titled celestial emperor. He knows Su Li as well. Soon after, Zhang Tianyu and the other two young geniuses shifted their attention to Su Li, who was sitting next to Duan Lingtian. They had heard about Su Li, who was only 600 years old and was already a titled celestial emperor. In fact, They had thought Su Li had the highest potential among the group of young geniuses who participated in the Battle of the Geniuses. However, when they saw Duan Lingtian's innate talent was on par with Su Li's, they dismissed the thought. At this moment, many of the young geniuses who were sitting nearby turned to look at Duan Lingtian and Su Li. Look! It's Duan Lingtian, the only true disciple of the legendary Heavenly Emperor of the solitary destructive heaven, and Su Li, the genius from the Jade Emperor Heaven. They know each other? I'm afraid they don't just know each other. Based on their familiarity, it's obvious they're old friends. At this moment, some people were sitting in groups of 3 to 5, and some were sitting alone. The young geniuses from the various Devata realms did not sit according to which Devata realms they were from. Instead, they sat casually. They were all waiting for the battle of the geniuses to begin. Duan Lingtian, who was chatting idly with Su Li, suddenly noticed a burning gaze that was looking at him from the spectating area, and he instantly looked over instinctively. With just a glance, he recognized the person. It was none other than Tong Tu, the fourth true disciple of the Heavenly Emperor of Xianyuan, whom he had injured 6 months ago. Duan Lingtian saw that after Tong Tu looked at him, Tong Tu said something to the young man next to him. Then, the young man shifted his gaze to him as well. When he discovered that he was looking at him, the young man actually nodded and smiled at him. His refined and courteous appearance made people unable to feel any ill will towards him. Upon seeing this, Duan Lingtian nodded at the young man as well. You know them? Su Liu followed Duan Lingtian's gaze and noticed Tong Tu, and the person beside him. That burly one is Tong Tu, the fourth direct disciple of Heavenly Emperor Xianyuan. Duan Lingtian smiled. So it's him. Su Li was enlightened. At the same time, he was a little puzzled. I'm afraid the person beside him isn't simple either. Tong Tu seems to be respectful in front of that person. In fact, not only Su Li, but even Duan Lingtian had long since discovered this. I don't know that person. As soon as Duan Lingtian finished speaking, Wang Ting, who was sitting behind him, said, that person is also the third direct disciple of the Heavenly Emperor of Xianyuan Heaven. He's Tong Tu's senior brother. His name is Yu Dongfang. It is said that Yu Dongfang's strength is at least that of a 4-star war god, or even stronger. Wang Ting said. Early on when Duan Lingtian arrived today, Wang Ting's group of 3 had already come over to apologize for their actions from half a year ago. Duan Lingtian utterly didn't take those matters to heart, so he calmly accepted their apologies. Moreover, since the 3 of them had come through the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven, it meant they had a close relationship with the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven. To a certain extent, they could be considered as one of their own. As the young master of the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven, Duan Lingtian, naturally, would not be stingy. A 4-star war god? Or even stronger? Upon hearing Wang Ting's words, Duan Lingtian could not help but turn to look at Yu Dongfang again. Su Li instinctively turned to look at Yu Dongfang as well. At this moment, even Ling Jueyin, who was sitting at the side with his eyes closed, opened his eyes. He followed Duan Lingtian and Su Li's gazes, and saw Yu Dongfang, the third direct disciple of the Heavenly Emperor of Xianyuan Heaven. A hint of battle intent could be seen in Yu Dongfang's eyes. At the same time, Yu Dongfang, who was seated on the opposite side of the arena, also noticed Duan Lingtian and the others' gazes. He glanced at Duan Lingtian before his eyes landed on Su Li. Then he asked Tong Tu, who was sitting next to Duan Lingtian, apart from Su Li, who's the other person? As soon as he finished speaking, he turned to look at Ling Jueyin. Although they were far apart, with Yu Dongfang's eyesight, he could easily see the battle intent in Ling Jueyin's eyes when he looked at Yu Dongfang. It was clear Yu Dongfang was aware of Yu Dongfang's identity. However, Yu Dongfang was certain Yu Dongfang was not an ordinary person. Upon hearing Yu Dongfang's question, Tong Tu also turned to look at Ling Jueyin. His expression turned solemn as he said, I didn't notice him earlier. It seems like he knows Duan Lingtian as well. Who is he? Yu Dongfang asked curiously. Since his junior brother had such an expression on his face, it was obvious Yu Dongfang was not an ordinary person. He came from Fengqing Tian, Tong Tu said fearfully. He came from Fengqing Tian's title temple, after he passed the test in Fengqing Tian's title temple's sub-temple. He's the strongest among those who passed the test in the title temple. As for the rest, the strongest one is close to a 3-star god of war. But even so, he was still no match for a single move from him. They suspect Ling Jueyan is at least one of the strongest 3-star gods of war. He might even be a 4-star god of war. Tong Tu's voice was filled with dread as he spoke. Does this mean he might be a 5-star god of war? Yu Dongfang narrowed his eyes. Well, no one said that. After all, there are less than 10 5-star gods of war participating in the Devata realm's battle of geniuses, Tong Tu said as he shook his head. It was obvious he did not think Yu Dongfang had the strength of a 5-star god of war. Interesting. Looks like there's another opponent that I can take seriously. Yu Dongfang's narrowed eyes opened. There was a flash of light and waves of battle intent rose in his eyes. Tong Tu looked at Duan Lingtian again. He clenched his fists tightly as his face twitched. If Duan Lingtian's strength was at most on par with him, he would challenge Duan Lingtian to a duel to avenge his humiliation. Although Duan Lingtian was defeated by Duan Lingtian's sneak attack, the others would not say the same thing. They would only say that Duan Lingtian, a core disciple of the Heavenly Emperor of the solitary destructive heaven, could not even defeat a true disciple who was much younger than him. In Tong Tu's opinion, even if he tied with Duan Lingtian, it would be enough for him to avenge his humiliation. Third senior brother? Tong Tu asked with a frown on his face. In the history of the Devata realms, there are at least 10 5-star gods of war participating in the Devata realm's battle of geniuses. In fact, there were a few occasions when there were more than 10 5-star gods of war participating in the Devata realm's battle of geniuses. This time, there are only 3 or 4 5-star gods of war participating in the Devata realm's battle of geniuses. Including Ling Jueyan, there are at most 5 5-star gods of war participating in the Devata realm's battle of geniuses. Will those unknown young geniuses really be able to fill the remaining spots? Tong Tu asked skeptically. Yu Dongfang shook his head and said, Junior brother, don't underestimate the vastness of the Devata realms. There's always someone stronger than you. Some of the reclusive experts were even as strong as his master. It's not impossible for those reclusive powerhouses to become 5-star gods of war. It's just a matter of how many there are. Chapter 3454. Brother Duan. At some point in time, a person appeared in the row behind Duan Lingtian and greeted Duan Lingtian warmly. Do you still remember me? This was a tall and sturdy young man with a handsome appearance. When he greeted Duan Lingtian, there was a harmless smile on his face. Duan Lingtian turned around to take a look when he heard the voice. He recognized the person with just a glance. I remember you. Duan Lingtian nodded and smiled when he saw the young man's enthusiasm. Tang Sanpao. Although it had been half a year since they last met, Duan Lingtian still remembered this young man, who had approached him as soon as he arrived at the heavenly palace of the primeval heaven. Back then, Duan Lingtian had not only asked for his name, but he had also told him his name. For this reason, Duan Lingtian knew that Duan Lingtian was called Tang Sanpao. That's right. Tang Sanpao nodded. His smile widened as he said, I didn't expect you to recognize me, Brother Duan. Why are you here? Aren't you with your friends? Duan Lingtian looked around. He only knew a few people, and there was no one else around. It was strange for Tang Sanpao to appear here. Perhaps Duan Lingtian was just here to greet him? I don't have any friends. Tang Sanpao shook his head. I went to the Tidal Temple's branch palace alone. I only came here with the people from the Tidal Temple. I don't know anyone else. Duan Lingtian was surprised by Tang Sanpao's words. He asked, Someone as enthusiastic as you should have a lot of friends, right? The scene of Tang Sanpao striking up a conversation with Duan Lingtian flashed in his mind. Tang Sanpao smiled awkwardly when he heard Duan Lingtian's words. I've been cooped up in the mountains for a long time. I can't help but greet people when I see them. I don't greet everyone. Of course, among the people that I greeted, Only you, Brother Duan, paid attention to me. Practically everyone else treated me coldly, and some even berated me." As he spoke, Tang Sampao could not help but sigh. Duan Lingtian smiled. However, he could also tell that this Tang Sampao had to look at the person he was trying to strike up a conversation with. He would not strike up a conversation with just anyone. He would only strike up a conversation with someone he thought was not ordinary. However, how many of those extraordinary people weren't proud and arrogant people? Why would they pay attention to others who blocked their way and tried to strike up a conversation? Even Duan Lingtian was a little impatient with Tang Sampao's endless chatter when he first met Tang Sampao. "Brother Duan, although everyone said that you were young and definitely didn't have much strength, I don't think so." As Tang Sampao spoke, he looked at Zhang Tianyu and the other two who were standing next to him, causing the three of them to feel awkward and guilty. How could someone who was accepted as a true disciple by the legendary Heavenly Emperor of the solitary destructive heaven be ordinary? In the end, you didn't disappoint me. You managed to injure the true disciple of the Heavenly Emperor of the solitary destructive heaven with just one strike. I'm looking forward to the battle of geniuses in the Devata realms. I'm eager to have a battle with you, Brother Duan. Tang Sampao's eyes shone brightly like the stars in the night sky. Eager to have a battle with me? Duan Lingtian was taken aback by Tang Sampao's words. He looked at Duan Lingtian meaningfully. It seemed like Duan Lingtian was also a young genius who had the strength of a titled celestial emperor. Otherwise, he would not have dared to say such words. At this moment, even Zhang Tianyu and the other two who were sitting next to Tang Sampao were looking at Duan Lingtian in shock. They did not expect Duan Lingtian to be a titled celestial emperor. A battle with Duan Lingtian? Su Li turned to look at Tang Sampao. He shook his head and smiled, but he did not say anything. He thought Duan Lingtian must have thought Duan Lingtian was an ordinary titled celestial emperor. As for Ling Jueyan, he did not even turn to look at Duan Lingtian. Although he had yet to witness Duan Lingtian's current strength, he knew Duan Lingtian's current strength was not much weaker than him. After all, it was impossible for an ordinary titled celestial emperor to be a match for Duan Lingtian. He's here. It's the Heavenly Emperor of the primeval heaven. At this moment, a voice rang from near Duan Lingtian and the others. Duan Lingtian and the others raised their heads to look. Duan Lingtian saw Ding Fu, the Heavenly Emperor of the primeval heaven, flying toward them with many people following behind him. Among them, there was a familiar face. It was Wei Qi, the Bone Dragon Celestial Emperor, who had led the way for Duan Lingtian. Wei Qi was also a true disciple of Ding Fu, the Heavenly Emperor of the primeval heaven. That's the Heavenly Emperor of Wave Trace. It's the Heavenly Emperor of Morning Heaven. That person is the Palace Master and two Vice Palace Masters of the Tidal Temple's branch in the 10,000 Beasts Heaven. The Heavenly Emperors and high-ranking officials of the Tidal Temple's branches in the Devata realms are here. It seems like the battle of the geniuses is about to begin. The appearance of the group of Heavenly Emperors and high-ranking officials from the various Devata realms caused an uproar among the crowd. Many young geniuses stared at the group of people who had just arrived. A group of titled celestial emperors from various Devata realms appeared one after another, attracting many people's attention. Apart from that, many people also paid attention to the palace masters of the tidal temples in the Devata realms. Naturally, the heavenly emperors from the Devata realms attracted the most attention. That's Situ Juqing, the heavenly emperor of the Luo River Heaven. Not long after Duan Lingtian withdrew his gaze, a voice resonated in the air. His eyes narrowed as he stared at the sky. A graceful and luxurious figure appeared in front of him. It was a beautiful woman. She had a smile on her beautiful face. She didn't look like someone who had been on the run for many years. A tall and well-built middle-aged man, with a face as fair as jade, stood next to her. He was chatting with her with a smile on his face. At this moment, many people began to whisper among themselves. That's the Qi Hongtian Emperor? That's right. That's the Qi Hongtian Emperor Zhou Binggu, who's ranked 5th on the Heavenly Emperor ranking. They seem to know each other. Upon hearing these words, Duan Lingtian narrowed his eyes slightly. The heavenly emperor of the Luo River Heaven actually dares to show herself? Is the battle of the geniuses really that attractive to her? Or perhaps, she thinks the heavenly emperor of the heavenly heaven, Qi Hong, will be able to protect her. Duan Lingtian's eyes flashed coldly when he heard these words. In the past, the heavenly emperor of the Luo River Heavenly Heaven had sent people to his hometown, the Saint Province realm, to kill him. After learning that the Saint Province realm belonged to his master, the heavenly emperor of the Luo River Heavenly Heaven left the Luo River Heavenly Palace. Since Master brought me to the Luo River sect, I'm sure she knows about my relationship with Master. Duan Lingtian thought to himself. She still dares to show herself? Duan Lingtian did not know where Situ Zhuqing, the heavenly emperor of the Luo River Heaven, found the courage to show herself, especially since his master was in the heavenly palace of the primeval heaven. The heavenly emperor of the Luo River Heaven? At this moment, Zhang Tianyu, Wang Ting, and He Jiani instinctively turned to look at Duan Lingtian. They had heard about the conflict between the heavenly emperor of the Luo River Heaven and Duan Lingtian, since their seniors were close to the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven. They knew the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven would not let the heavenly emperor of the Luo River Heaven off so easily. They also knew the heavenly emperor of the Luo River Heaven had left the Luo River Heaven out of fear of the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven. Young Master Duan, why is the heavenly emperor of the Luo River Heaven so bold as to show herself here? Isn't she afraid the heavenly emperor will punish her? He Jiani asked curiously. At this moment, Zhang Tianyu and Wang Ting also looked at Duan Lingtian in confusion. Could it be that the heavenly emperor of the Luo River Heaven had secretly reached an agreement with the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven? Could it be that she has reached an agreement with the heavenly emperor and you? He Jiani asked curiously. There's no agreement. Duan Lingtian shook his head. Then, he glanced at the heavenly emperor of the Luo River Heaven indifferently and said, perhaps she thinks the heavenly emperor of the Luo River Heaven has something to rely on. Or perhaps she thinks the heavenly emperor of the Luo River Heaven won't make a move at this time. The heavenly emperor of the Luo River Heaven won't make a move at this time? Zhang Tianyu and the other two looked at each other and shook their heads. If it was an ordinary heavenly emperor, they might have some misgivings about the situation. Would the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven do the same? At the same time, those who knew about the enmity between the heavenly emperor of the Luo River Heaven and the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven could not help but whisper among themselves. Didn't the heavenly emperor of the Luo River Heaven leave the Luo River Heaven? Why is she still here? Isn't she afraid of encountering heavenly emperor Feng Qingyang? Heavenly emperor Feng Qingyang is here as well, right? Did they reach an agreement? Most people thought the heavenly emperor of the Luo River Heaven and the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven had reached an agreement. Otherwise, they could not figure out why the heavenly emperor of the Luo River Heaven dared to come here. Although the news of Feng Qingyang, the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven, going to the Luo River Heaven to look for Situ Zhuqing, the heavenly emperor of the Luo River Heaven, was not widely known, it was still widely known. At this moment, those who were unaware of the truth of the matter began to learn about it from those who were in the know. The heavenly emperor of the Luo River Heaven actually sent someone to kill the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven. How could a heavenly emperor of a Devata realm do such a thing? This is an evil deed that will incur the wrath of the heavens. Even if heavenly emperor Feng Qingyang makes a move, the heavenly emperor of the primeval heaven and the tidal temple won't interfere, right? Since she dares to come here, it's impossible she didn't think of the consequences. Perhaps she really has reached an agreement with Feng Qingyang, Situ Zhuqing, the heavenly emperor of the Luo River Heaven, and the Qi Hongtian emperor landed on a floating island. She sat down with a smile on her face. Based on her expression, she did not seem afraid at all. Where did Situ Zhuqing get her confidence from? However, I'm afraid the Qi Hongtian emperor won't be able to stop Master, right? Duan Lingtian's eyes flashed coldly, as though he was about to devour Situ Zhuqing. Silence. Silence. Chapter 3455. As the news spread, more and more people turned to look at Situ Zhuqing, the heavenly emperor of the Luo River heaven. However, even under everyone's watchful eyes, Situ Zhuqing's expression remained calm. It was as though she was fearless. Suddenly, as though she had a flash of inspiration, she shifted her gaze to Duan Lingtian. It was not difficult for Duan Lingtian to figure out why she was behaving this way. Someone must have informed her of his identity through voice transmission. Duan Lingtian met Situ Zhuqing's gaze fearlessly as a sneer appeared on his face. You must be Duan Lingtian. At this moment, a woman's voice rang in Duan Lingtian's ears. I'm Situ Zhuqing, the heavenly emperor of the Luo River heaven. Situ Zhuqing said through voice transmission. The enmity between me and your master Feng Qingyang is all because of you. If you didn't kill my daughter, I wouldn't have vented my anger on your hometown, the mundane realm, even if I couldn't find you. What do you think? If you're willing to look for Feng Qingyang and ask him to let go of this enmity, I won't pursue the matter of you killing my daughter anymore. Duan Lingtian was taken aback when he heard Situ Zhuqing's words. Then, he replied disdainfully through voice transmission. You're the heavenly emperor of the Luo River heaven. What can you do even if you want to pursue the matter? Don't tell me you dare to make a move on me? Duan Lingtian did not believe Situ Zhuqing would dare to make a move on him here. Even if his master had not shown up, the heavenly emperor of the primeval heaven would not let Situ Zhuqing have her way, let alone the others. Apart from being the host of the Battle of Geniuses, the heavenly emperor of the primeval heaven was also a good friend of Duan Lingtian's master. He was also ranked 4th on the heavenly emperor ranking. He was stronger than the Qi Hongtian emperor Zhou Binggu. Although Zhou Binggu, the heavenly emperor of the Qi Hongtian, was ranked at the top of the heavenly emperor ranking, he was ranked behind the heavenly emperor of the primeval heaven, Ding Fu. Brat, are you going to stay by Feng Qingyang's side and hide in the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven? Situ Zhuqing sneered in response. Her tone was filled with threat. Hee, Duan Lingtian chuckled. Aren't you afraid that you won't be able to leave this place alive? Don't you know that my master is also in the heavenly palace of the primeval heaven? Almost as soon as Duan Lingtian finished speaking, and before Situ Zhuqing could respond, the crowd burst into an uproar. It's Feng Qingyang, the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven. I've finally met the legendary heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven. He's as handsome as jade and mighty as the rumors say. It's said that Feng Qingyang is the youngest heavenly emperor in the Devata realms. That's right. I've heard that he's an ascender, who has only ascended for 10,000 years. It's shocking that he's able to achieve so much in just 10,000 years. For heavenly emperors who stood at the peak of the Devata realms, 10,000 years was not a long time. After all, most heavenly emperors had lived for tens of thousands, or even hundreds of thousands of years. There were even some who had lived for hundreds of thousands of years. The further one progressed in cultivation, the more difficult it was to cultivate. Although the Devata realm's battle of geniuses was held once every 1,000 years, and there would always be a few 5-star gods of war under the age of 1,000, most of these geniuses would be stuck at a bottleneck. Even if they were given 10,000 or 10,000 years, it would still be difficult for them to make any progress. Only a small number of them would be able to continue growing stronger. Some people were extremely talented in the beginning, but when the profundities they needed to comprehend reached a certain level, it would be difficult for them to cross the threshold. For example, some titled celestial emperors might be able to comprehend the fusion of 3 profundities easily, but it would take them tens of thousands of years to comprehend the 4th profundity. It seems like this legendary heavenly emperor has set his eyes on the heavenly emperor of the Luo River heaven as soon as he arrived. It seems like they haven't reached an agreement yet. How dare the heavenly emperor of the Luo River heaven come here? Is she tired of living? Upon seeing Feng Qingyang flying towards Situ Zhuqing, the heavenly emperor of the Luo River heaven, the heavenly emperor of the Luo River heaven, and staring at her coldly, an uproar broke out among the crowd. Many people's eyes lit up, as though they were waiting to watch a show. It seemed like they would be able to witness a battle between heavenly emperors today. Sita Zhuqing, I didn't expect you to show yourself after hiding for so many years. Feng Qingyang's voice was not loud, but it was exceptionally clear in the quiet Devata realms. Based on Feng Qingyang's casual tone, anyone would be able to detect the coldness in his voice. Master. Duan Lingtian's eyes lit up when he saw Feng Qingyang. Feng Qingyang, Heavenly Emperor. Situ Zhuqing looked at Feng Qingyang warily when the burly middle-aged man sitting opposite her rose to his feet. He was none other than Zhou Binggu, the Qi Hongtian Emperor. He was ranked 5th on the Heavenly Emperor ranking, second only to Ding Fu, the Heavenly Emperor of the Primeval Heaven. Before Feng Qingyang came out of the Azura Hell, one of the 7 deadliest places in the Devata realms, he was ranked 4th on the Heavenly Emperor ranking. I've heard about the enmity between you and the Heavenly Emperor of the Luo River Heaven. Zhou Binggu looked at Feng Qingyang and said politely, in the end, it's because your disciple killed the daughter of the Heavenly Emperor of the Luo River Heaven. That's why the Heavenly Emperor of the Luo River Heaven lost her mind and slaughtered many people in your hometown. You want to protect her? Feng Qingyang did not respond to Zhou Binggu's tirade. Instead, he looked at Zhou Binggu indifferently. Heavenly Emperor Feng Qingyang, please do me this favor. Zhou Binggu said with a faint smile. Do you this favor? Feng Qingyang's eyes flashed coldly as he said, who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, no one expected Feng Qingyang to say such a thing. Heavens! How domineering! His opponent was the Qi Hongtian Emperor, the 5th on the Heavenly Emperor ranking. Even if his opponent was not as strong as him, the difference should not be too big, right? Could it be that the rumors were true? Has Heavenly Emperor Feng Qingyang really become a god? Even Duan Lingtian was taken aback. He did not expect his master, who was usually kind and friendly in front of him, would become a completely different person in front of outsiders. Swoosh, swoosh. The expressions of the Qi Hongtian Emperor and the Heavenly Emperor of the Luo River Heaven changed drastically. This was especially true for Zhou Binggu, the Qi Hongtian Emperor. His expression darkened as he asked, Heavenly Emperor Feng Qingyang, are you trying to start a war? As soon as the words left Zhou Binggu's mouth, a wave of scorching heat suddenly rose from the floating island he was on. Then, a monstrous flame rose into the sky and enveloped the entire floating island, spreading in all directions. In just a blink of an eye, the scorching aura spread to every corner of the Devata realms. A war. Apart from Ding Fu, the Heavenly Emperors of the Primeval Heaven, the other Heavenly Emperors narrowed their eyes when they realized a war was about to break out. At this moment, Feng Qingyang said, do you think you're worthy? As soon as Feng Qingyang's words left his mouth, the entire place fell silent. The legendary Heavenly Emperor of the solitary destructive heaven was too arrogant. He did not give them any face at all. Brother Duan, your master is too domineering, as expected of my idol. Tang Sanpao, who was standing behind Duan Lingtian, exclaimed excitedly. Meanwhile, Zhang Tianyu and the other 2 Heavenly Emperors standing next to Tang Sanpao looked at the majestic figure in the distance with burning eyes. They were the legendary Heavenly Emperors of the solitary destructive heaven, invincible sword celestials. Master, I didn't expect Junior Uncle Feng to have such a side to him. Wei Qi, the Bone Dragon Celestial Emperor, stood behind Ding Fu with a shocked expression on his face. I didn't expect this as well. Ding Fu shook his head. Brother Feng has always been polite and courteous to me. Although I heard he once killed a Heavenly Emperor for Meng Luo, the Heavenly Savage Celestial Emperor, I didn't expect him to be even more domineering than me. It's true that there are new talents in every generation, and the new generation replaces the old. Ding Fu sighed when he reached the end of his sentence. In terms of age, Feng Qingyang was younger than him by more than 100,000 years. When he had recruited many disciples in his early years, Feng Qingyang had not even been born in his hometown, the mundane realm. However, Duan Lingtian, a legendary Heavenly Emperor, who was only slightly over 10,000 years old, had already surpassed him. At this moment, The other heavenly emperors of the Devata realms were also looking at Feng Qingyang with a shocked expression on their faces. Did Heavenly Emperor Feng Qingyang really become a god? Zhou Binggu, the Qi Hongtian Emperor, said with an unsightly expression on his face. Heavenly Emperor Feng Qingyang, everyone says you've become a god. Today, I'd like to see how strong you really are. As soon as he finished speaking, Zhou Binggu had already soared into the air. The flames around his body quickly condensed and finally gathered around his body. It was like a dazzling sun, making it difficult for people to look at him directly. A terrifying heat wave surged out and shrouded the entire place, causing everyone to feel as though they were in the middle of a scorching summer. At this moment, everyone could feel the terrifying flames around Zhou Binggu. With the temperature of the flames around Zhou Binggu, there was not much in the world that could not be smelted by them. I've told you, you're not worthy. Feng Qingyang shook his head. Then, without any movement, a khaki-colored energy shot up into the sky above his head. In just a blink of an eye, it transformed into a gigantic sword that continued to expand. That's the law of Earth? Isn't Feng Qingyang's forte the law of destruction? He's going to use the law of Earth to deal with Qi Hongtian's Heavenly Emperor Zhou Binggu. An uproar broke out among the crowd when they saw this. Not only were the young geniuses shocked, but even the titled celestial emperors present on the scene were shocked as well. Chapter 3456. Even before Feng Qingyang, the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven, was trapped in the Azura Hell, one of the 7 deadliest places in the Devata realms. His destruction sword Dao was well known in the Devata realms. Everyone knew that the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven was skilled in the law of destruction. However, most people did not expect Feng Qingyang, the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven, would use the law of Earth instead of the law of Earth. How could he be a match for Zhou Binggu, the Qi Hongtian emperor, if he used the law of Earth? After all, Zhou Binggu was ranked 5th on the heavenly emperor ranking in the Devata realms. He was much stronger than the other 76 heavenly emperors in the Devata realms. Naturally, some people were shocked by this news as well. It seems like the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven has most likely attained godhood. Even Zhou Binggu, the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven, felt the same way. Zhou Binggu's expression changed drastically when Feng Qingyang's yellow greatsword shone brightly and emitted a terrifying aura. This was because he could sense the terrifying aura contained within the great sword at this critical moment. Although this was the second time he had sensed the aura, it was unforgettable. It was the aura of divine energy. Divine energy, the energy of a god. It seemed like Feng Qingyang, the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven, had attained godhood. Heavenly Emperor Feng Qingyang, please show mercy. Now Zhou Binggu was terrified. Although he had faintly touched the threshold of a god, and could be called a demigod, he knew that compared to a real god, the difference was like heaven and earth. A true god did not even need to fuse the profundities of laws to suppress him. After all, divine energy was much stronger than celestial origin energy. As a demigod, he knew the difference between divine energy and divine energy. Boom! Rumble! A loud explosion interrupted Zhou Binggu's words. When Zhou Binggu sensed Feng Qingyang's irresistible will, he no longer dared to be careless. His body shone brightly like a dazzling sun that illuminated heaven and earth. However, after defeating Zhou Binggu's all-out defense, when that enormous sword descended, the power on his body was completely defeated. Then he was crushed to the ground, his body sinking into the earth. Boom! With a loud bang, the giant sword disappeared. When Zhou Binggu stood up in a sorry state, his face was already ashen. His eyes and face were filled with terror and fear. God! This was the power of a god. He was powerless of the heavenly emperor of heaven. Heavenly emperor of the heavenly emperor of the heavens. Heavens! Heavenly emperor of the heavenly emperor of heaven realm. That's too terrifying. His strength is too terrifying. Qi Hongtian Emperor is ranked 5th on the Heavenly Emperor ranking. It's said that he's close to becoming a demigod. However, He can't even withstand a single blow from Heavenly Emperor of Heaven Realm Feng Qingyang. Most importantly, Heavenly Emperor of Heaven Feng Qingyang didn't use the law of destruction. He only used the law of earth. In the past, I've never heard of Heavenly Emperor of Heaven Feng Qingyang using the law of earth. Me too. This was the first time Feng Qingyang had displayed the power of a god in front of everyone. Everyone knew the legendary Heavenly Emperor of the solitary destructive heaven was not just a rumor. He had really become a god. The rumors were not groundless. Brother Feng. Although Ding Fu, the Heavenly Emperor of the primeval heaven, knew that Feng Qingyang had become a god, he was still shocked when he saw Feng Qingyang easily defeating Qi Hongtian and Zhou Bingguo. Then he smiled bitterly. He knew that when he challenged Feng Qingyang in the past, Feng Qingyang had shown him mercy. Otherwise, he would not have been defeated so easily. He had been puzzled at first. Was it not said that the celestial origin energy of a celestial being was not comparable to the divine energy of a god? Why was he able to barely withstand it? Now that the truth was out, he knew Feng Qingyang had held back when he challenged him. He's too strong. Is this the power of a god? Tang Sanpao, who was standing behind Duan Lingtian, stared at Feng Qingyang from afar. The fervent look in his eyes grew even more intense and uncontrollable. Among the people present on the scene, only Duan Lingtian and Ling Juyin remained calm. Duan Lingtian had learned from Feng Qingyang about the difference in strength between a celestial and a god. Even the servant of the Yun clan, who had forced Feng Qingyang into the Azura Hell, one of the 7 deadliest places in the Devata realms, was only a demigod. Ling Juyin, on the other hand, had been around a group of gods since he was young. Naturally, he knew how powerful gods were. Naturally, the palace masters of the tidal temple's sub-palaces, who were present on the scene, were also aware that Feng Qingyang had become a god. Otherwise, they would not have placed Feng Qingyang in the top 3 on the Heavenly Emperor ranking. Only a god would be able to walk out alive from the Azura Hell, one of the 7 deadliest places in the Devata realms. Based on this, the tidal temple had concluded that Feng Qingyang had become a god. How domineering! He managed to injure the Qi Hongtian Emperor with just a single sword strike. No wonder the legendary Heavenly Emperor of the solitary destructive heaven said the Qi Hongtian Emperor wasn't worthy of fighting him. Now it seems like he really isn't worthy of fighting him. Everyone's eyes were trained on Feng Qingyang. Soon after, many heavenly emperors and palace masters of the tidal temple's sub-palaces arrived. However, not many people paid attention to them, since everyone's attention was on Feng Qingyang. Feng Qingyang's strength was shocking. Feng Qingyang's strength was terrifying. From today onward, if you, the Qi Hongtian Emperor, dare to interfere in the matter between me and Sita Zhuqing, you'll die. Feng Qingyang stared at Zhou Bingguo, the heavenly emperor of Qi Hongtian. His tone was cold and resolute. No one dared to doubt his words. However, Feng Qingyang's words confused everyone, including Duan Lingtian. Was the heavenly emperor of the Luo River Heaven not going to die soon? Once the heavenly emperor of the Luo River Heaven died, even if the Qi Hongtian Emperor wanted to interfere in the matter between Sita Zhuqing and Feng Qingyang, he would not be able to do anything about it, right? However, when Feng Qingyang spoke, they found out the reason behind Sita Zhuqing's words. Sita Zhuqing. After suppressing the heavenly emperor Qi Hong, Feng Qingyang turned to look at Sita Zhuqing, who had an unsightly expression on her face as he said, "Do you think I won't make a move on you just because your subsoul is residing in the immortal compliant tree?" Upon hearing Feng Qingyang's words, everyone, including Duan Lingtian, finally understood what was going on. No wonder Feng Qingyang said that earlier. As it turned out, Sita Zhuqing was not in her true form. Instead, she was in the immortal compliant wood. Many people exclaimed in surprise. I've long heard that the immortal compliant wood can contain celestial souls and form clones. Although it's not as strong as a clone, it's still very lifelike. If one doesn't examine it with their divine consciousness, they won't be able to see through it. It seems like the rumors are true. As it turns out, the heavenly emperor of the Luo River Heaven is not in her true form, but a clone of the immortal compliant wood. The immortal compliant wood is a precious treasure even in the Devata realms. However, it's only normal for the heavenly emperor of the Luo River Heaven to have a divine compliant wood. At this moment, Situ Zhuqing rose to her feet and looked at Feng Qingyang grimly as she said, "Heavenly Emperor Feng Qingyang, even if you've attained godhood, you're not invincible. I'm not afraid to tell you that my man is a god from the realms of gods. When the spatial tunnel between the realms of gods and the Devata realms opens in 300 years, he'll be able to descend to the Devata realms. He is no ordinary deity. If you insist on fighting me to the death, my man won't let you get away with it." Situ Zhuqing sneered. Situ Zhuqing knew it was useless for her to back down now, so she decided to use force. She brought up her man, a god from the realms of gods. As soon as Situ Zhuqing finished speaking, an uproar broke out among the crowd. None of them had expected her to say such a thing. The man of the heavenly emperor of the Luo River Heaven was a god from the realms of gods? Although most people knew Situ Zhuqing, the heavenly emperor of the Luo River Heaven, had a daughter. They did not know the father of her daughter. Moreover, the father of her daughter had always been a mystery. Some people even speculated that the heavenly emperor of another Devata realm, or a reclusive powerhouse, had an affair with the heavenly emperor of the Luo River Heaven, and had given birth to her daughter. Naturally, everyone knew the heavenly emperor of the Luo River Heaven had two daughters. The other daughter had been killed by Duan Lingtian, the only true disciple of the heavenly emperor of the Luo River Heaven, Feng Qingyang. "My daughter, who was killed by your true disciple, Duan Lingtian, is his biological daughter," Situ Zhuqing said threateningly. Upon hearing Situ Zhuqing's words, everyone turned to look at Feng Qingyang again. Although Feng Qingyang has become a god, he has only recently ascended to godhood. Since the heavenly emperor of the Luo River Heaven's man is from the realms of gods, he must be a god. I'm afraid heavenly emperor Feng Qingyang might not be a match for him. I didn't expect the heavenly emperor of the Luo River Heaven's man to be a god from the realms of gods. The true disciple of the heavenly emperor of the Luo River Heaven, Feng Qingyang, killed the daughter of a god? Meanwhile, Duan Lingtian narrowed his eyes slightly. He did not expect the heavenly emperor of the Luo River Heaven would have a god who was her husband. Many people thought Feng Qingyang would be intimidated after hearing the heavenly emperor of the Luo River Heaven's words. However, Feng Qingyang merely looked at Situ Zhuqing indifferently and said, "So what?" As soon as Feng Qingyang finished speaking, tens of thousands of sword rays shot out of his body and engulfed Situ Zhuqing. The immortal compliant wood was instantly destroyed. Many people felt their hearts ache when they saw this scene. Although the immortal compliant wood was precious, it was nothing to Feng Qingyang, the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven. Perhaps, the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven had immortal compliant wood as well. Generally, immortal compliant wood would only grow in places with supreme-grade celestial crystal veins. The heavenly palace of a Devata realm was a heaven-grade force that had a supreme-grade celestial crystal vein. Chapter 3457. In the heavenly palace of Qi Hongtian. Damn it! Situ Zhuqing's true body had always been in the Qi Hongtian Emperor's palace. She had come here because the Qi Hongtian Emperor knew her man was a god in a realm of gods. Back then, the Qi Hongtian Emperor had witnessed her man's strength. Naturally, at that time, her man was obsessed with her. However, after her man left, he never returned. After all, her man had a family in a realm of gods. She was, at most, just a lover he had met while he was roaming the realms of gods. For this reason, the Qi Hongtian Emperor, Zhou Bingguo, had taken her in because he knew she had a relationship with a god. However, she did not expect her man would not give her any face, even though she had used the divine wishful wood to appear in front of Feng Qingyang, the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven. He had destroyed her divine wishful wood clone as soon as he made a move. "Feng Qingyang, you forced me to do this. You forced me to do this." At this moment, Situ Zhuqing's eyes were crimson red, as if she had gone mad. The hairpin on her head had been broken at some point in time, and a terrifying power was wreaking havoc around her body. Her robes fluttered without any wind, creating a mighty momentum. At this moment, Situ Zhuqing no longer had the slightest bit of grace and elegance. She looked like a complete madwoman. I'll look for him when the spatial tunnel connecting the realms of gods to the Devata realms is opened. I'm sure he'll avenge our daughter, even if he doesn't care about our relationship. Situ Zhuqing's eyes were filled with hatred and anger. However, very quickly, she calmed down again. She raised her hand and took out another hairpin and tied it into her hair. Then, she regained her calm and collected appearance. Where was the crazy appearance from before? You are. In the next instant, Situ Zhuqing contacted her eldest daughter, Feng Jianyu, who was also the former holy maiden of the Luo River sect. Let's immediately leave the Qi Hongtian Emperor Palace. We can't stay here any longer. Since Feng Qingyang, the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven, knew she was close to Qi Hongtian, the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven, after the Devata realm's battle of the geniuses ended, he might come looking for her in the heavenly palace of Qi Hongtian. Once her real body was targeted by Feng Qingyang, she didn't think that she would be able to survive. In just 400 years I can wait. Feng Qingyang, I only hope that after 400 years, you can still be as unyielding as you are today. When Situ Zhuqing brought Feng Jianyu out of Qi Hongtian's heavenly emperor palace, she didn't greet anyone. Although she looked calm on the surface, her eyes were filled with extreme hatred. As the heavenly emperor of the Luo River heaven, she was not the kind of person who was willing to live in seclusion. If she was willing to live in seclusion, she wouldn't have competed for the position of heavenly emperor of the Luo River heaven. However, due to the existence of the legendary heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven, not only was it impossible for her to return to the Luo River heaven, but she also did not dare to reveal her whereabouts for fear of being targeted. In the heavenly palace of the primeval heaven, at the venue of the Devata realm's genius battle, even though Situ Zhuqing, the heavenly emperor of the Luo River heaven, had threatened him, Feng Qingyang remained calm and composed as he casually destroyed Situ Zhuqing's immortal Wishfulwood clone. This scene caused the hearts of everyone present to tremble. The heavenly emperors of the various Devata realms were impressed by Feng Qingyang's courage. As expected of someone who came from the Azura Hell, one of the 7 deadliest places in the Devata realms. He's fearless even in the face of godly spirits from the realms of gods, even though he has just become a god. Heavenly Emperor Feng Qingyang's heart is truly admirable. Perhaps, it's because of his fearless heart that he's able to achieve so much in such a short time. It was easy to say that one was fearless, but very few people were capable of doing so. Back then, when Feng Qingyang was being hunted down in the Azura Hell, if it were any other celestial emperor, they would have fought with their lives on the line instead of fleeing to the Azura Hell. After all, if one did not become a god, one would definitely die in the Azura Hell. This was an ironclad rule. Even a godly being would not dare to enter the Azura Hell for fear of death. Legend had it that only supreme powerhouses could enter the Azura Hell as they wished. Naturally, these were only legends. Only the supreme powerhouses knew the truth. After killing Situ Zhuqing's clone, Feng Qingyang led Meng Luo, the heavenly emperor of the Luo River heaven, to the small floating island where the heavenly emperor of the primeval heaven was seated. Ding Fu, the heavenly emperor of the primeval heaven, did not invite the heavenly emperors of the other Devata realms to sit with him. Based on this, one could see how much he valued Feng Qingyang. Wind Celestial Emperor, I Ding Fu rarely admire anyone in my life. Today I admire you, Ding Fu said as he gave Feng Qingyang a thumbs up. If he were in Situ Zhuqing's shoes, he would not dare to offend her after learning she had a godly being in a realm of gods. After all, the spatial tunnel between the Devata realms and the realms of gods was not always closed. Every 10,000 years, the spatial tunnel would be closed for 1,000 years. The passage had been closed for almost 600 years. In another 400 years, the passage between the realms of gods and the Devata realms would reopen. At that time, the gods from the realms of gods would be able to descend to the Devata realms, and the people from the Devata realms would be able to travel to the realms of gods. Naturally, godly beings and celestials from the Devata realms rarely traveled to the realms of gods. After all, celestials from the Devata realms would not be noticed in the realms of gods, and they might even encounter danger. On the other hand, godly beings from the realms of gods were not allowed to kill indiscriminately in the Devata realms, especially the heavenly emperors of the Devata realms and the people from the tidal temple. This was a rule set by the supreme powerhouses. If a godly being from the realms of gods dared to make a move, they would be punished by the supreme powerhouses. In the past, the servant of the Yun clan from the realms of gods dared to make a move on Feng Qingyang because he was only a demigod and had yet to become a god. Therefore, he did not violate the rules set by the supreme powerhouses. For example, Yun Qingyan, the great young master of the Yun clan in the Divine Offering Land, did not dare to make a move on Feng Qingyang. Feng Qingyang smiled faintly and shook his head in response to Ding Fu's flattery. "You flatter me, old brother Ding." At this moment, Feng Qingyang was still the center of attention. "Duan Lingtian, Senior Feng Qingyang is really powerful. You're really lucky to be his true disciple." At this moment, apart from Duan Lingtian, Tang Sampao, who was standing behind Duan Lingtian, looked at Feng Qingyang with a burning gaze. Even Su Li was no longer as calm as before. Moreover, he had spent some time with Feng Qingyang. With Feng Qingyang's guidance, he had learned a lot about the sword Dao, and his strength had improved a lot. All he had to do now was wait for the Devata realm's battle of the geniuses to begin. When the next heavenly emperor, who was ranked in the top 10, on the heavenly emperor ranking appeared, everyone's attention finally shifted away from Feng Qingyang. "It's Yu Hao Tian, the heavenly emperor of the Jade Emperor Heaven." The person who attracted everyone's attention was none other than Yu Hao Tian, the heavenly emperor of the Jade Emperor Heaven. Many people in the Jade Emperor Heaven addressed him as the Jade Emperor. "He's the Jade Emperor?" Duan Lingtian turned to look in the direction of the Jade Emperor Heaven's heavenly emperor's gaze. With just a glance, he saw Yu Hao Tian, the heavenly emperor of the Jade Emperor Heaven. The heavenly emperor of the Jade Emperor Heaven was a tall and well-built middle-aged man. His face was as fair as jade, and his eyebrows were as sharp as swords. Emperor Yu Hao Tian of the Jade Emperor Heaven was ranked 8th on the All Heavens Emperor ranking. The Jade Emperor was no stranger to Duan Lingtian. He was a figure from the ancient myths and legends on Earth, where he lived in his past life. However, in some of the ancient myths and legends, the Jade Emperor did not seem to have any dharmic powers. For example, in Journey to the West, the Jade Emperor did not make a move when Sun Wukong wreaked havoc in the Heavenly Palace. However, Duan Lingtian had a feeling the Jade Emperor was more than just an embroidered pillow, since he was able to become the master of the Heavenly Court. Now that the Jade Emperor was ranked 8th on the Heavenly Emperor ranking, it was clear he was stronger than Sun Wukong, the Heaven's equal celestial emperor. The man with 3 eyes behind the Heavenly Emperor of the Jade Emperor Heaven must be the famous 3-eyed celestial emperor, Yang Jian. Soon after, someone noticed the young man standing behind Yu Hao Tian. The young man had a cold expression on his face. He was dressed in silver armor, and his eyes were sharp. There was a vertical eye between his eyebrows, making him look rather strange. Erling Shun Yang Jian. Duan Lingtian's heart trembled. He did not expect to meet the 2 legendary figures from his previous life's hometown Earth. "I wonder if Sun Wukong will come? Normally he wouldn't come, right?" Duan Lingtian thought to himself. While Duan Lingtian was still in a daze, a cry rang in the air. His eyes widened in shock. "Look, it's Tathagata, the Hall Master of the Tidal Temple's branch in the Xianyuan Heaven." Duan Lingtian was taken aback when he heard the voice. When he looked over again, he saw a tall and sturdy young monk dressed in a purple-gold kasaya, leading a few old monks in the air. The people around him addressed him as Tathagata. "He's Tathagata? Is he Tathagata Buddha?" Duan Lingtian was filled with questions. Soon after, someone answered his question. "I heard Tathagata, the Hall Master of the Tidal Temple's branch in the Xianyuan Heaven, used to be a powerful figure in the Jade Emperor Heaven. He was invited by the Tidal Temple to be the hall master of the Tidal Temple's branch in the Xian Yuan heaven. I've heard about that as well. It's said he was invited to be the hall master of the Tidal Temple in the Xian Yuan heaven because he's good friends with the heavenly emperor of the Xian Yuan heaven. Chapter 3458. It's said that the great sun celestial emperor, Tathagata, the heavenly emperor of the Xian Yuan heaven, and the heavenly emperor of the Jade Emperor heaven, came from the same mundane realm. If that's true, then isn't the mundane realm there in two heaven-defying? Of course. It's one of the legendary mundane realms in the Devata realms. I think it's called the Yanhuang realm. Yanhuang realm? If there's a chance, I'll have to go and take a look. You can go and take a look, but don't cause any trouble. If you dare to make a move on Yanhuang realm, like the Luo River Heaven's Emperor did, you'll definitely die. Although the discussions of the surrounding people were not loud, with Duan Lingtian's hearing, he could still hear them clearly. It was also because of this that he was completely certain. The hall master of the Xian Yuan Heaven Tidal Temple's branch, the great sun celestial emperor Tathagata, was the same Tathagata that he knew. Soon, the heavenly emperor of Xian Yuan arrived as well. It was obvious that the Jade Emperor Heaven's Emperor, the great sun celestial emperor Tathagata, and the Xian Yuan heavenly emperor had come together. Otherwise, they wouldn't have shown up one after another. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the three of them gathered on the same floating island. Gongsun Xian Yuan. Duan Lingtian's gaze quickly fell on the heavenly emperor of the Xian Yuan heaven. He was also looking forward to meeting this former opponent of his master, a legendary figure from the ancient myths and legends of his previous life on Earth. Now he finally saw it. After the three heavenly emperors of the Jade Emperor heaven arrived, more heavenly emperors arrived one after another. However, since the heavenly emperors ranked in the top 10 on the heavenly emperor ranking of Devata realms were present, the arrival of ordinary heavenly emperors did not attract much attention until another heavenly emperor ranked in the top 10 on the heavenly emperor ranking of Devata realms arrived. It's the heavenly emperor of the Wanshou heaven, ranked 6th on the heavenly emperor ranking Di Huang. This heavenly emperor Di Huang is from the Qilin clan. He's a divine beast, the Chaos Qilin. Furthermore, he was born with the primal chaos divine flame, one of the 5 divine elements. I've seen the man behind heavenly emperor Di Huang once. He's the patriarch of the Qilin clan in the 10,000 Beasts heaven Di Hong. The one who attracted everyone's attention was none other than the 10,000 Beast heaven's heavenly emperor, the primal chaos Qilin of the Qilin clan, Di Huang. Di Huang was ranked 6th on the heavenly monarch ranking. Moreover, he was one of the few people in the Devata realms who possessed the 5 divine elements. Even the gods in the realms of gods would be tempted by the 5 divine elements, let alone the people in the Devata realms. There were many people who were stronger than Di Huang in the Devata realms, but none of them dared to snatch the chaos divine flame from her body. It was all because the Kirin clan had a supreme expert. Once something happened to Di Huang, that supreme expert would definitely intervene. It was said that there was a mark left behind by that supreme expert on Di Huang's body. No matter who it was that tried to kill Di Huang, that supreme expert would know. Because of this, even though Di Huang had the primal divine flame, one of the 5 divine elements, no one dared to snatch it from him, because they were all afraid of the supreme expert from the Qilin clan behind him. Supreme beings were existences above the realms of gods. Even the most powerful gods would be killed with just a flick of his finger, let alone people from the Devata realms. No matter how powerful a titled celestial emperor was, even a 9-star god of war could be killed by a supreme expert with just a flick of his finger. The Chaos Kirin possesses the Chaos Divine Flame, one of the 5 divine elements. A hint of dread could be seen in Duan Lingtian's eyes as he looked at Di Huang. Fortunately, he had sealed his little world to conceal the aura of the 5 divine elements. Otherwise, he would have been discovered by Di Huang. Even if Di Huang could not snatch the 5 divine elements from Duan Lingtian, who knew if Di Huang would contact the supreme expert from the Qilin clan to snatch the 5 divine elements from Duan Lingtian. Although Duan Lingtian's master was strong, He would not be a match for the supreme expert if he made a move. Nobody knew what Duan Ling Tian was thinking at this moment. If someone knew about it, they would definitely laugh their heads off. This was because it was common knowledge that a supreme powerhouse might protect a descendant that he valued, or even the inheritance of his clan. But he would not care too much about other things. As long as the Qilin clan was not destroyed and a descendant of his or her clan was not killed, he would not care even if more people died. Take the Qilin clan for example. If Di Huang, the heavenly emperor of the 10,000 beasts heaven, died, the supreme expert from the Qilin clan would definitely intervene. However, if the patriarch of the Qilin clan was the only one who died, the supreme expert would not interfere. Naturally, even if the supreme expert did not interfere, Di Huang, the heavenly emperor of the 10,000 beasts heaven, would definitely interfere. Everyone was wary of Di Huang, since it was highly likely that he would provoke the supreme expert. Although the supreme expert from the Qilin clan cared about Di Huang's safety, he would not interfere with Di Huang's growth, let alone help him snatch the 5 divine elements from others. After all, the supreme expert would not do such a thing. After all, the supreme experts were too powerful. Even if they had selfish motives, they still had a bottom line for some things. After the arrival of the heavenly emperor of the 10,000 beasts heaven, there were also heavenly emperors who were ranked in the top 10 on the heavenly emperor ranking. Naturally, among the heavenly emperors who were ranked in the top 10 of the heavenly emperor ranking, the most eye-catching ones were the 2 heavenly emperors who were ranked first and second on the heavenly emperor ranking. Both of them were ranked higher than Feng Qingyang, the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven. If the person ranked second on the heavenly emperor ranking in the Devata realms doesn't display his godlike strength, the legendary heavenly emperor from the solitary destructive heaven will replace him. That's right. Whether it's the second-ranked heavenly emperor or Feng Qingyang, both of them are suspected to have attained godhood. Now that heavenly emperor Feng Qingyang has shown his strength as a god, it's clear that he's a god. If the heavenly emperor of the Great Desolation can't prove that he's a god, he'll be replaced by heavenly emperor Feng Qingyang. You're wrong. Even if the second-ranked heavenly emperor of the Great Desolation heaven proves his strength, he'll still be ranked third on the heavenly emperor ranking, since he's ranked behind Feng Qingyang. There's only one way for him to return to the second-ranked heavenly emperor of the Great Desolation heaven, and that's to defeat Feng Qingyang. When Heaven Emperor Ji Fantian, who was ranked first on the heavenly monarch ranking, and Heaven Emperor Ji Fantian, who was ranked second on the heavenly monarch ranking, arrived, the atmosphere reached its climax. The heavenly emperor of the Great Desolation heaven was a tall and burly middle-aged man with a square face. He looked at Feng Qingyang, the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven, and said with a smile, "Heavenly Emperor Feng, it seems like you'll replace me on the heavenly emperor ranking after today. Heavenly Emperor Kong, if you want the ranking, you can take it back at any time." Feng Qingyang said with a faint smile on his face. The eyes of the others lit up when they heard the conversation between the 2 heavenly emperors. Could it be that these 2 heavenly emperors were still preparing to have a world-shocking showdown? Haha, I don't really care. Kong Ji, the heavenly emperor of the Great Desolation heaven, laughed nonchalantly. After he finished speaking, he looked at Feng Qingyang meaningfully before he said, "Heavenly Emperor Feng, I'm afraid the title temple is going to interfere with your promotion to the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven now that you've revealed your god-level cultivation base." After he finished speaking, he glanced at the hall masters of the title temple, who were more powerful and had a higher status in the title temple. A mocking expression appeared on his face. Upon hearing Kong Ji's words, Feng Qingyang said nonchalantly, "In that case, I'm looking forward to the powerhouses from the title temple coming to drag me down." The title temple did not allow a god to become the heavenly emperor of a Devata realm. However, if they wanted to drag a god down, they would usually send a god-level powerhouse to compete with them. After that, the god-level powerhouse would become the heavenly emperor of the Devata realm. After that, the god-level powerhouse would step down and allow other titled celestial emperors to compete for the position. Naturally, The condition was that the god-level powerhouse sent by the tidal temple was stronger than the original heavenly emperor of the Devata realm, who had already become a god. It seems like Heavenly Emperor Feng Qingyang is very confident. I'll wait and see. Feng Qingyang's words stunned Kong Ji for a moment before he regained his senses. However, if one were to take a closer look, one would be able to see that there was a look of shock in the depths of Kong Ji's eyes. It was clear he did not expect Feng Qingyang or Duan Lingtian to be so confident. Many of the palace masters from the tidal temple's branches in the Devata realms frowned as they looked at Feng Qingyang coldly. The legendary heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven had become a god not long ago, and yet he was so arrogant. It seemed like it was time to teach him a lesson. Amitba. A sonorous voice rang in the air as Tathagata, the great sun celestial emperor, rose to his feet. He joined his palms together as he looked at Feng Qingyang and said, "After the Devata realm's battle of the geniuses ends, I'll head to the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven to fight the wind heavenly emperor." Upon hearing Tathagata's words, an uproar broke out among the crowd. Even Duan Lingtian was shocked by Tathagata's words. Almost everyone present understood the meaning behind Tathagata's words. Palace Master Tathagata from the tidal temple's branch in the Xian Yuan heaven has also become a god? It's obvious. Otherwise, where did Palace Master Tathagata get the courage to challenge the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven? Heavens! Another god-level powerhouse. Everyone was shocked. Haha! At this moment, the heavenly emperor of the G Brahma heaven, who was ranked first on the heavenly emperor ranking of the all heavens, laughed as he looked at Feng Qingyang and Tathagata. "Gentlemen, please let me know when you're going to fight. I want to witness your battle." The heavenly emperor of the G Brahma heaven had been confirmed to have become a god several thousand years ago. Chapter 3459. There were only a few gods in the Devata realms who had ascended to godhood. Before today, the only person who was confirmed to have become a god was Jiyu, the heavenly emperor of the G Brahma heaven, who was ranked first on the Devata heavenly ranking. However, from today onward, Jiyu, the heavenly emperor of the G Brahma heaven, and Feng Qingyang, the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven, were confirmed to have become gods as well. Apart from the heavenly emperor ranking, many people had long speculated that there was more than one god in the tidal temple. Otherwise, how could the tidal temple be able to keep the records of all the Devata realms in the long history of the Devata realms? Today, Feng Qingyang, the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven, had revealed his strength as a god. Therefore, the great sun celestial emperor, the hall master of the tidal temple's branch in the Xian Yuan heaven, had challenged Feng Qingyang to a duel. According to the rules of the tidal temple, Feng Qingyang was determined to kill Feng Qingyang. Feng Qingyang, the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven, was expelled from the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven. After all, the tidal temple did not allow gods to occupy the heavenly palaces of Devata realms. To a certain extent, gods were above the Devata realms. Such existences should go to the realms of gods instead of staying in the Devata realms. Even if they were to stay in the Devata realms, they would have to keep a low profile. This was something that the tidal temple had always done. The tidal temple is trying to expel Feng Qingyang from the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven. It's said that it's one of the tidal temple's duties to expel gods from the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven. Many of the young geniuses present on the scene knew about the tidal temple. Naturally, most of them were unaware of this. If that's the case, why didn't the tidal temple expel the heavenly emperor of the G Brahma heaven from the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven, since he's also a god? Moreover, why is he ranked first on the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven? That's right. Jiyu, the heavenly emperor of the G Brahma heaven, has long become a god. Why is he still the heavenly emperor of the G Brahma heaven? Celestial Emperor Feng Qingyang has been exposed as a god, and he's about to be dragged down. Why is this so unfair? Well, it's not unfair. According to my seniors, Jiyu, the heavenly emperor of the Ji Fantian, was challenged by more than one god from the title temple. However, none of those gods were able to defeat Jiyu at all. In Yu, the heavenly emperor of the heavenly palace of Ji Brahma heaven. You secret heavenly secret secret heavenly secret. This is a huge secret, and you actually know about it? Who are you? Heavenly heavens heavenly heaven. You heavens master heavenly master, famous heavenly celestial you heavens. Of course, apart from such discussions, there was also another type of discussion. I've heard that the reason why the heavenly emperor of the Ji Brahma heavenly emperor is able to remain as the heavenly emperor of the Ji Brahma heavenly emperor is because he has a powerful background. There is such a thing. If that's the case, it's only natural that he's still the heavenly emperor of the Ji Fan celestial race after becoming a god. If the heavenly emperor of the Wansho heaven becomes a god, I'm sure the title temple won't dare to make a move on him. It's no secret that the Qilin clan has a supreme expert. Someone revealed a different secret. But no matter what, one thing was certain. Although Jiyu, the heavenly emperor of the Ji Brahma heaven, had become a god, no one, not even the title temple, could remove him from his position. Let's see if the legendary heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven can create another legend and secure his position as the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven. Unfortunately, I don't think anyone will be allowed to watch the battle between him and Pavilion Master Rulai. If I could witness their battle with my own eyes, I would be willing even if I had to cripple 100 years of my cultivation. If my cultivation is gone, I can cultivate it back. But if I can't witness this battle, I will regret it for the rest of my life. Although I'm more than 800 years old, I'm willing to sacrifice 200 or even 300 years of my cultivation base to watch their battle. Similar discussions could be heard among the spectators in the Devata Realm's Battle of Geniuses. The group of young geniuses wanted to personally witness the battle between the two gods. Even if they were there, they might not be able to clearly see the movements of the two gods. However, they still wanted to see the final result. They wanted to see who would win and who would lose, and whether or not someone would die. Whether it was the battle between the two gods or the death of a god, it was enough for them to brag about for the rest of their lives. Master. At this moment, Duan Lingtian had a deep frown on his face. Although he was confident in his master, Feng Qingyang, the great sun celestial emperor, Tathagata, was not someone to be trifled with since he dared to challenge his master. Tathagata Buddha, in the ancient myths and legends of my previous life on earth, he was an almost invincible existence. Moreover, when he challenged Master, his expression was as calm as an ancient well. There was neither joy nor sorrow, and he appeared to be extremely calm. To a certain extent, this is a display of confidence. Duan Lingtian thought about many things in just a blink of an eye. The Devata Realm's Battle of Geniuses was bound to be a topic of discussion for a long time to come. Before the battle began, a heavenly emperor who had revealed his god-level cultivation base had defeated the person who was ranked 5th on the heavenly emperor ranking in just one move had shocked everyone. Then, he killed another heavenly emperor's immortal Wishfulwood clone. Then, the hall master of the title temple Xian Yuan Tian's branch, who was unknown to many, had announced that he would challenge the heavenly emperor, who had revealed his god-level cultivation base. The heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven, Feng Qingyang, the great sun celestial emperor Tathagata. Before the Devata Realm's Battle of Geniuses began, Tathagata Buddha stole the limelight. Young geniuses from the various Devata realms, please calm down. The Devata Realm's Battle of the Geniuses will begin in an hour. The person in charge of the Devata Realm's Battle of Geniuses was none other than the Vice Hall Master of the Title Temple. Naturally, the Vice Hall Master of the main temple was not one of the Vice Hall Masters of the Title Temple. Nobody knew where the Title Temple's main hall was. Some said it was in a Devata realm. Some said it was hidden in a mundane realm. Some said it was in a realm of gods. And some said it was in an independent realm created by a supreme powerhouse outside of the Devata realms. In the Devata realms, the Title Temple's branch was the only thing that people knew about. Nobody knew where the title temple's main temple was. In fact, it was said that even the vice hall masters of the title temple did not know where the main temple was located. Although they had been to the main temple, they had been sent there through the transporting formations in the branch palaces. I'm Su Konghai, the vice hall master of the title temple's main temple. Su Konghai, the vice hall master of the title temple's main temple, was a white-haired young man with a youthful complexion. He had a pair of long, straight eyebrows that reached his temples, and he looked valiant. He was tall and muscular. When he looked around, it was obvious he was looking down on everyone. The vice hall master of the title temple's main temple? The rumor is true. The main temple will send someone to preside over the Devata realm's battle of geniuses. It's said that the title temple's main hall is filled with gods. Let alone the vice palace masters. Even the elders in the main hall are as strong as the palace masters of the title temple's branches in the Devata realms. Vice hall master Su must be a god as well. The group of young geniuses looked at Su Konghai with a burning gaze. Most of the people present on the scene, including the heavenly emperors of the Devata realms, had only seen this mysterious vice palace master of the main hall before. Most of the people present on the scene, including the heavenly emperors of the various Devata realms, had not seen this mysterious vice palace master before. Most of them were heavenly emperors who had lived for a long time. However, when they thought about the Devata realm's battle of geniuses that would begin in an hour, they withdrew their gazes from Su Konghai, the vice hall master of the title temple's main temple. Many young geniuses closed their eyes to meditate and calm down. Their opponents in the Devata realm's battle of geniuses were all geniuses from different Devata realms. Even the slightest change in their emotions could cause them to be defeated and eliminated. Naturally, there were also some young geniuses who were chatting with the people around them. Duan Lingtian. In the past Devata realm's battles of geniuses, more than 1,000 people would be eliminated in the first round, and the remaining 1,000 people would enter the second round. Suli was familiar with the Devata realm's battles of geniuses in the past. After the remaining 1,000 people enter the second round, they'll fight until only 300 people enter the third round. Although 300 people have entered the third round, the 700 people who were eliminated will have 3 chances to challenge any one of the 300 people. That round is the most intense part of the Devata realm's battle of the geniuses. After all, the 700 people who are eliminated might not be eliminated, because they're weaker than the other 300 people. Some of the 300 people must have relied on others to enter the third round. The purpose of the third round of challenges is to eliminate those opportunistic people. Suli said, "Yes, I've heard about it." Duan Lingtian nodded. He had heard about this from his master, Feng Qingyang. So he knew the third round would determine the top 300 people in the Devata realm's battle of geniuses. The top 300 people would enter the fourth round and fight fiercely. The ranking of the top 300 people would be determined. After all, the rewards for the top 300 people were different. The higher the ranking, the better the rewards. As for the remaining 1,000 or so people who were eliminated, there was no reward. This was because even if there was a reward for them, it would not be anything good. Moreover, they might not be interested in it. An hour passed in just a blink of an eye. Now, I hereby announce the start of the Devata realm's battle of geniuses. Su Konghai, the vice palace master of the title temple's main hall, who was presiding over the Devata realm's battle of geniuses, announced loudly. His voice was not loud, but it was deafening to the young geniuses. Chapter 3460. Now, all young geniuses who are participating in the Devata realm's battle of the geniuses are to rise 10 meters into the air. Su Konghai, the vice palace master of the main hall of the title temple, said, "After 10 breaths, those who don't rise into the air will be disqualified." As soon as Su Konghai finished speaking, the young geniuses in the spectator seats rose into the air one after another. From the spectator stands, a total of more than 2,000 people stepped into the air. Looking from afar, they looked like locusts that had woken up from a deep slumber. They were densely packed. Duan Ling Tian, Su Li, and Ling Ju Yun, who were standing next to Duan Ling Tian, also rose to a height of 10 meters. We're going to start the first round of elimination. Although Duan Ling Tian knew they were going to eliminate more than 1,000 people in the first round, he did not expect they would be asked to rise into the air. Initially, he thought they would have to enter a spacious area before the first round of elimination would begin. It's similar to the test to enter the Heavenly Pool Palace. Duan Ling Tian remembered that when he and Huan Er went to the Heavenly Pool Palace in the Boundless Heaven, one of the tests was similar to this one as well. At that time, Lei Ying, the merciless celestial emperor, was in charge of overseeing the test to enter the Heavenly Pool Palace. 10 breaths later, all the young geniuses in the auditorium had stepped into the air and reached a height of 10 meters. Su Konghai's eyes suddenly narrowed as he continued in a clear voice. Next, I'll be exerting pressure on you. Anyone who falls to the ground will be eliminated. When there are 1,000 people left, I'll stop exerting pressure on all of you. Now you have 10 breaths to prepare. As soon as Su Konghai's words came out, the faces of most of the young geniuses in the void became extremely solemn. On their bodies, energies of various colors revolved around the surface of their bodies. Clearly, they were all beginning to accumulate power, preparing to resist the incoming pressure. The pressure came from Su Konghai, the vice palace master of the main hall of the Tidal Temple, who was suspected to be a god. Of course, they knew that Su Konghai would not use his full strength against them. At most, he would exert some pressure on them. If a powerhouse of this level were to go all out, the pressure would envelop them. Even if they didn't die, they would be crippled. 10 breaths were gone in the blink of an eye. At this moment, most of the young geniuses present held their breaths. There were only a few hundred people who were still able to maintain their composure. These hundreds of people included Duan Ling Tian, Su Li Ling Juyan, Tang Sampao, and Zhang Tianyu. Most titled celestial emperors were calm at this moment, because they all knew that they would not be eliminated in the first round. With their strength, there was no suspense in passing the first round. Those who were not titled celestial emperors would be eliminated in the first round. For example, Wang Ting and He Jiani, who were beside Zhang Tianyu, both of their expressions were extremely grave, as if they were facing a great enemy. Whoosh! Crash! Su Konghai didn't seem to have made any movements, but an invisible pressure suddenly extended from his body, enveloping the more than 2,000 young geniuses present. More than half of the young geniuses' bodies trembled. Many of them began to vomit blood or bleed from their 7 orifices. Although they tried their best to withstand the pressure, their bodies were still on the verge of collapsing. Due to Su Konghai's pressure, a few hundred people were injured in the second round of the second round. Whoosh! The third round of the second round arrived as expected. This time, more than 100 people could not withstand the pressure and fell from the sky. A few hundred people were injured, and their bodies were on the verge of collapsing. Whoosh! In the fourth round of the second round, hundreds of people fell from the sky like dumplings being dropped into a pot. I'm still eliminated. Many people who fell from the sky smiled bitterly. I was willing to pass the first round, but I didn't expect to be eliminated in the first round. My strength is close to that of a titled celestial emperor. I didn't expect to be eliminated so easily. I was too careless. I thought I had hidden my strength, but I didn't expect to be eliminated because of it. Palace Master Su's fourth round of the second round eliminated more than 500 people. Isn't the speed of elimination a little too fast? At this moment, those who were eliminated, including Duan Ling Tian and the other titled celestial emperors, discovered that more than half of the people who were still standing in the sky were on the verge of collapsing. Some of them had pale faces. It was obvious they had just suffered a great deal of pressure. After the fifth round, I'm afraid the first round will end. A heavenly emperor from a Devata realm said as he looked at the scene before him. Another heavenly emperor from a Devata realm nodded in agreement. Based on the current situation, that's indeed the case. As soon as the 2 heavenly emperors finished speaking, Su Konghai, the vice palace master of the Tidal Temple, and the person in charge of presiding over the Devata realm's Battle of the Geniuses, launched the 5th round of the second round of the second round. At this moment, even the young titled celestial emperors who were standing in the sky had a solemn expression on their faces. Some people's bodies trembled slightly. It was obvious the 5th round of the second round was even stronger. Naturally, there were also those who were not affected by the 5th round, such as Duan Lingtian, Su Li, Ling Juan and Tang Sanpao. Even Yu Dongfang, the third true disciple of the heavenly emperor Xian Yuan, who was seated opposite Duan Lingtian, was not affected by the 5th round of the second round. On the other hand, Tong Tu, the fourth true disciple of the heavenly emperor Xian Yuan, had a tense expression on his face. Junior brother, it seems like Duan Lingtian, the true disciple of the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven, is indeed stronger than you. Yu Dongfang glanced at Duan Lingtian in the distance. With his eyes, it was not difficult for him to see Duan Lingtian's current calm expression. With Yu Dongfang's reminder, Tong Tu looked over and saw that Duan Lingtian had ignored the 5th wave, just like his third senior brother. At this moment, no matter how unwilling he was to admit it, he had no choice but to admit that Duan Lingtian was not weaker than him. Of course, he didn't want to admit it. Third senior brother, this doesn't mean anything. Maybe he's good at defense, or good at resisting this kind of pressure. Yu Dongfang only shook his head when he heard this. He didn't say anything, because he knew his junior brother very well. Unlike the young geniuses who were titled celestial emperors, they were either unaffected or only slightly affected. On the other hand, the young geniuses who had yet to become titled celestial emperors were not in a good situation. Wow. PFFF. Hundreds of young geniuses spat out mouthfuls of blood at the same time. Many fell from the sky, while some were still hanging on. Those who were hanging on began to fall from the sky one after another. It was as though they were queuing up to land. The number of young geniuses in the sky continued to dwindle. Wang Ting, I can't hold on any longer. You hang in there. He Jiani, who was standing behind Duan Lingtian, looked wretched. His face was as pale as a sheet of paper. He could not hold on any longer and fell from the sky. At the same time, he did not forget to use the last of his strength to encourage Wang Ting, who was on the verge of collapsing. Among the 3 people from the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven, Zhang Tianyu, Wang Ting, and He Jiani, Zhang Tianyu was the strongest. Zhang Tianyu was a titled celestial emperor. Although his face was slightly red and his body trembled slightly, he did not seem to be affected by the 5th wave. On the other hand, Wang Ting, who was standing next to Zhang Tianyu, looked as though she would fall at any moment. However, when Wang Ting heard He Jiani's words, she seemed to have regained her strength. Although she was on the verge of collapsing, she stubbornly held on. Wang Ting, just hang in there for a little longer, and you'll be able to pass the first round. Zhang Tianyu looked at his surroundings and saw there were only slightly more than 1,000 young geniuses left. You'll be able to pass the second round if less than 100 people are eliminated. Upon hearing Zhang Tianyu's words, Wang Ting took a deep breath and continued to hold on. At this moment, she had completely unleashed her potential. Swoosh! A soft sound rang in the air as the 2 profundities from the law of water merged and spread out. Wang Ting seemed to have calmed down a lot. In the next moment, Wang Ting's pale face gradually returned to normal. Her eyes glinted sharply as she looked at Duan Lingtian. She broke through? Zhang Tianyu's eyes widened in shock. It was not difficult for Duan Lingtian to see that Wang Ting had broken through the last hurdle and entered the realm of titled celestial emperors. Currently, Wang Ting's strength was comparable to that of an ordinary titled celestial emperor. Most importantly, her profundities from the law of water had merged. She broke through? These 2 brats actually managed to break through and become titled celestial emperors under such circumstances. While Wang Ting was breaking through, a young man who was hovering in the air above the spectator area had also broken through and attracted the attention of many heavenly emperors. Wang Ting was the granddaughter of Meng Luo's friend. Meng Luo, who was standing behind Feng Qingyang, could not help but smile when he saw Wang Ting breaking through. Brother Feng, this little girl from the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven is not bad. It's rare for someone to break through under such circumstances. Ding Fu, the heavenly emperor of the primeval heaven, said to Feng Qingyang with a smile on his face. Feng Qingyang nodded. A hint of surprise could be seen in his eyes. After Wang Ting and the young man broke through, the pressure on them was lifted. They sighed in relief as they looked at the people around them. One by one, people fell from the sky. They finally broke through. Soon after, another young man broke through. After about a dozen breaths, there were only 1,000 people left. At this moment, Su Konghai, who was supporting the Devata Realm's Battle of the Geniuses, withdrew his aura and said, "Congratulations on passing the first round of the Devata Realm's Battle of the Geniuses." At this moment, those who were not as strong as titled celestial emperors heaved a sigh of relief. Joy could be seen on their faces. Chapter 3461. In fact, most of the young geniuses who had come to participate in the Devata Realm's Battle of the Geniuses were already mentally prepared to face the Celestial Emperor realm. After all, they were here to serve as foils. They were here to serve as foils for the young geniuses, who had the strength of a titled Celestial Emperor. Naturally, many of them were here to seek a breakthrough. After all, they had heard that many geniuses would break through during the Devata Realm's Battle of the Geniuses in the past. Although they did not receive any substantial rewards in the end, being able to break through was already the best reward they could get. For this reason, they could not help but feel envious when they saw Wang Ting and the other two young geniuses, who had the strength of a titled Celestial Emperor realm. I thought I'd be able to break through. In the end, I was so close to breaking through. Me too. I was so close to breaking through, but I didn't make it. These three young geniuses are really lucky. They managed to break through at the most critical moment and possess strength comparable to a titled Celestial Emperor. If they didn't participate in the Devata Realm's Battle of the Geniuses, it would be extremely difficult for them to break through before they reached the age of 1,000. Many people who had been eliminated, and those who had the strength of a titled Celestial Emperor, could not help but sigh. Some people looked at Wang Ting and the other two young geniuses enviously. So what if they've broken through? Since they passed the first round, even if they pass the second round, there's still a chance they'll be eliminated in the third round. At most, they'll make it to the fourth round. Naturally, these people were jealous of Wang Ting and the other three young geniuses. Not many people paid them any attention. If they were given a choice, they would still choose to break through or not. They were merely jealous of Wang Ting and the other two young geniuses. I hereby announce the end of the first round of the Devata Realm's Battle of the Geniuses. At this moment, Su Konghai, one of the vice palace masters of the main hall of the Tidal Temple, announced loudly, "Now, the 1,000 people who passed the first round will have 2 hours to rest. After that, the second round will begin." As soon as Su Konghai finished speaking, the crowd returned to their seats one after another. None of them were worried that they would be mixed up with those who had been eliminated, because those who were eliminated absolutely didn't have the guts to participate in the second round of selection after the first round. This kind of small method of fishing in troubled waters would only cause the lucky ones to lose their lives. In the history of the Devata Realm's Battle of the Geniuses, there were always people who tried to take advantage of the situation. However, all of them were killed by the people from the Tidal Temple, who were in charge of the Devata Realm's Battle of the Geniuses. Even the disciples of heavenly emperors were killed. If anyone tried to take advantage of the situation, the Tidal Temple would view it as a challenge to its authority. Furthermore, it was only 1,000 people, so it was easy to remember them. Even if an ordinary person wanted to, it would be very difficult for them to remember 1,000 people. However, would it be difficult for a god who was above the 10 directions celestial emperors to remember 1,000 people? Apart from that, the vice palace masters of the Tidal Temple's branches in the Devata realms had already recorded the names of the young geniuses who had advanced to the Devata realms. Even the names of the young geniuses from the Heavenly Emperor Palace in the Devata realms had been recorded in the Tidal Temple's branches. For example, before the Devata realms Battle of the Geniuses, the Vice Palace Masters of the Tidal Temple's branch in the solitary destructive heaven had gone to look for Meng Luo and asked for their information so that they could keep tabs on the names of Duan Lingtian, Zhang Tianyu, and Wang Ting. Currently, the Vice Palace Masters of the Tidal Temple's branch in the solitary destructive heaven had recorded the names of the young geniuses who had advanced to the Devata realms. Including the 4 people from the Heavenly Emperor Palace, we have a total of 23 people from the solitary destructive heaven. Currently, 13 of them have advanced to the Devata realms. That's not bad. The Vice Palace Master of the Tidal Temple's branch in the solitary destructive heaven said with a smile. The Vice Palace Master nodded. Yes, that's not bad. However, what surprised me the most is the true disciple of the Heavenly Emperor of the solitary destructive heaven. Earlier, when he faced the 5th wave of pressure from Vice Palace Master Su, he remained calm. He doesn't seem like an ordinary titled celestial emperor. Upon hearing the Vice Palace Master's words, the Vice Palace Master's expression turned solemn. It seems like the true disciple of the Heavenly Emperor Feng Qingyang is at least a 2-star god of war. How shocking! He's only slightly over 600 years old, but he's already a 2-star god of war. Upon hearing the Vice Palace Master's words, the Vice Palace Master turned to look at the young man standing next to Duan Lingtian. That young man's name is Su Li from the Jade Emperor Heaven. He's about the same age as Duan Lingtian. He's at least a 2-star god of war. Both of them are monstrous geniuses in the Devata realm's Battle of the Geniuses. 2 hours passed by in the blink of an eye. It did not take long for the 2 hours to pass by. As for those young geniuses who had been exhausted in the first round, they had all recovered in these 2 hours. After all, what they had just experienced was not a battle of life and death. They had only consumed a certain amount of celestial core power and some mental energy. If they wanted to recover, they would only need a few hours. 2 hours was more than enough. Many of them even chatted for more than half an hour after they had recovered. The 1,000 people who passed the first round will now enter the arena. As soon as Su Konghai, the Vice Palace Master of the main hall of the Tidal Temple, who was in charge of the Devata realm's Battle of the Geniuses, spoke, the 1,000 young geniuses who had survived until the end of the first round flew into the arena in the middle of the spectator area. 1,000 young geniuses, no more no less. As soon as they entered the arena, Su Konghai raised his hand and sent a wave of energy into the vast arena. The arena immediately lit up. First, a translucent beam of light rose into the air before a white light shrouded the arena. At the same time, the light shrouded Duan Lingtian and the others as well. Due to the large size of the arena, it did not seem crowded even if 1,000 people were to enter the arena. At the same time, Su Konghai's voice rang again. I'm sure most of you know the rules of the second round of the Devata realm's Battle of the Geniuses. I'll repeat it now. 1,000 people will fight without discrimination. 700 people will be eliminated. And the second round will end when 300 people are left. Each person will have 1 jade token. If you crush it at a critical moment, it'll send you out of the formation's light shield. When he spoke up to hear, Su Konghai raised his hand, and 1,000 jade tokens descended from the horizon like a celestial maiden scattering flowers. And they accurately descended towards the group of young geniuses, including Duan Lingtian. On the other hand, the 1,000 young geniuses firmly held onto their jade tokens in their hands. The jade tokens were life-saving treasures at critical moments. Although the Devata realm's Battle of the Geniuses was not a battle of life and death, it was not unusual for one to kill the young geniuses. Naturally, you'll be eliminated if you crush your jade token. Apart from that, you'll also be eliminated if you leave the area covered by the formation's light shield on your own. You'll also be eliminated if you're eliminated, Su Konghai said. For a time, Duan Lingtian and the others glanced at the formation light shield to determine the specific gap between them, so that they would not accidentally create their own formation light shield during the battle and be eliminated miserably. Isn't this place too small? 1,000 people won't be able to fight freely in such a small place. Many people began to complain. However, it was the same for everyone. It was useless even if they complained. It did not mean that everyone was treated differently. You have 15 minutes to prepare. Su Konghai's voice rang again, shocking Duan Lingtian and the others. After 15 minutes, I'll announce the start of the Battle of the Geniuses. You'll be able to eliminate the others. As soon as Su Konghai finished speaking, an uproar broke out among the 1,000 participants. Some of them knew each other, and some of them did not know each other, and they began to look for someone to work with, so they would not be eliminated in the second round. I don't care anymore. No matter how high the price is, I'll pass the second round and enter the third round, even if I'll be eliminated in the third round. A young man dressed in brocade robes said through gritted teeth, I'll find someone who's a titled celestial emperor to help me pass the second round. Once I pass the second round and enter the third round, I'll be able to boast to everyone that I've advanced to the third round of the Devata Realm's Battle of Geniuses. Being eliminated in the second round and being eliminated in the third round are two completely different things. Quite a few people had similar thoughts. For this reason, they were willing to work with someone who could help them enter the third round. Although these people were willing to pay the price, none of them came looking for Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian could not help but feel puzzled. What's wrong with these people? Put aside the question of whether he would agree to work with them. These people should at least ask him, right? Tong Tu, the fourth true disciple of the heavenly emperor of the Xianyuan heaven, had been defeated by Duan Lingtian, and yet, many people had approached him to ask if he was willing to work with them. Duan Lingtian knew most of the people who came to look for Tong Tu were after Tong Tu's senior brother, Yu Dongfang. He was certain Yu Dongfang would help Tong Tu enter the third round. Duan Lingtian, it seems like they don't have high hopes for us. Su Li shook his head with a wry smile on his face. He could see those who were weaker than titled celestial emperors did not approach them, even though they were all titled celestial emperors. It was as though they would be in danger if they followed them. In the end, someone stepped forward to ask Ling Jueyun. It was Feng Qing Tian's young prodigy. He had come here with Feng Qing Tian's title temple's branch, so he was aware of Ling Jueyun's strength. However, after Ling Jueyun rejected the young prodigy's offer, 15 minutes had passed. No one was interested in Duan Lingtian and the others anymore. The second round of the Devata Realm's Battle of the Geniuses begins now. Su Konghai's voice arrived as scheduled, deafening everyone's ears. Chapter 3462. The second round of the Devata Realm's Battle of Geniuses has officially begun. Before Su Konghai spoke, most of the young geniuses present on the scene had tensed up and looked at the people around them with a solemn expression on their faces. Naturally, there were also many people who remained calm. For example, apart from Zhang Tianyu and Wang Ting, Duan Lingtian, Su Li Lingjuyan, and even Tang Sampao had a calm expression on their faces. As soon as Su Konghai finished speaking, the scene immediately turned chaotic. Colorful energies filled the entire place in just a blink of an eye. The battle royale had officially begun. Duan Lingtian and his group stood at a corner of the arena. They did not make the first move, as though they were not part of the battle. In just a blink of an eye, battles broke out in other places. Many people crushed their jade tokens in the nick of time and were sent out of the arena. In less than a dozen breaths of time, more than 20 people had already given up. Naturally, not everyone had the chance to give up. Some people were too greedy and were too slow to react. Due to that, they were killed immediately. In the beginning, only one person had died. Soon after, a few more people died. Seemingly affected by the deaths of these few people, no one dared to be careless or greedy anymore. When they felt something was amiss, they immediately crushed their jade tokens and left. Under such circumstances, the number of people who died decreased. Someone's watching us. Zhang Tianyu, who was standing behind Duan Lingtian, suddenly said as he looked to the right in front of him cautiously. Although Zhang Tianyu and Wang Ting did not say anything to Duan Lingtian, when they saw the two of them following Duan Lingtian, and Duan Lingtian did not say anything, they heaved a sigh of relief. At the same time, they wanted to perform well. Both of them were constantly on guard. Now that there was a situation, Zhang Tianyu immediately warned them. Just as Zhang Tianyu finished speaking, a group of 7 people flew towards Duan Lingtian's group of 6. The person in the lead was the person who had just killed one person. His ability was not as simple as a 1-star war god. He was at least a 2-star war god or even stronger. The only true disciple of the Heavenly Emperor of the solitary destructive heaven. If I can eliminate you in the second round, I'll be able to brag about it for the rest of my life. The leader was an ordinary-looking young man with a medium build. He was surrounded by lightning, as if he was a god of thunder and lightning bathed in lightning. He came with a vast amount of lightning. Lightning flashed and thunder roared. His momentum was mighty and intimidating. From his words, it was obvious that he wanted to eliminate Duan Lingtian. The other 6 people standing behind him were all young prodigies, with strength comparable to titled celestial emperors. 2 of them exuded the aura of laws and profundity, which was enough to prove that they were not weak. The disciple of the Heavenly Emperor is only slightly over 600 years old, but you're already as strong as a titled celestial emperor. Today I, Lin Wei, shall witness your strength. The young man who called himself Lin Wei raised his hand and brought out a gigantic hammer that was surrounded by lightning bolts. The hammer seemed to carry an unparalleled divine might as it swept toward Duan Lingtian and the others. As the hammer fell, heaven and earth changed color. It seemed as though it could destroy everything. At the same time, Duan Lingtian discovered that the young man's profundities were glowing even more brightly than before. At this moment, Duan Lingtian could tell that the young man's prodigy was not weak at all. At the very least, the young man was one of the strongest among the 2-star war gods. Most likely, he was the strongest among the 7 people standing before him. Based on this, it was obvious the young man wanted to make a name for himself by eliminating Duan Lingtian in the second round. At this moment, even if Duan Lingtian's heart was like an ancient well without ripples, the corners of his mouth couldn't help but curl into a helpless arc. When did I, Duan Lingtian, become a soft persimmon in the eyes of others? Before Lin Wei could get close to Duan Lingtian, Ling Juoyun, who was standing next to Duan Lingtian, scoffed. Then, his eyes turned cold as another Ling Juoyun appeared in his body. This was the law of death's death clone profundity. The other Ling Juoyun's eyes were crimson red. As soon as he flew out of his body, he shot toward Lin Wei and the others like a blood-red meteor in the night sky. A terrifying murderous aura surged out of his body as he charged toward Lin Wei and the others. You're seeking death. Lin Wei sneered. His target was Duan Lingtian. No matter who it was, he would mercilessly destroy anyone who stood in his way. So what if you have a death clone? I can crush you with a single strike of my hammer. The gigantic hammer in Lin Wei's hand seemed to have transformed into a meteor, as it fell on Ling Juoyun's death clone profundity. Dazzling lightning bolts flashed in the air, as though it was a punishment from the 9 heavens. Boom! Rumble! The gigantic hammer was extremely fast. As it flew through the air around it exploded like thunder. Just as the gigantic hammer was about to land on Ling Juoyun's death clone profundity, Ling Juoyun's death clone profundity suddenly surged. Then its speed more than doubled, and it easily dodged the gigantic hammer. Like a ghost, it instantly closed in on Lin Wei, who had just regained his senses. With one hand on Lin Wei's head and the other on Lin Wei's shoulder, the death clone profundity's eyes flashed with an extremely cold light. No! Just as Lin Wei let out a shrill scream of terror, a jade tablet appeared in his hand, and he was about to crush it. Rip! The sound of something being torn apart rang out. It was Ling Juoyun's death clone profundity tearing Lin Wei's body apart with its bare hands. In an instant, his head was separated from his body. Blood splattered everywhere, dazzling to the eye. At this moment, Even the people who were fighting in the vicinity were shocked by the commotion. They stopped fighting and looked at Ling Jueyin warily. "Sir, we won't fight with you anymore. We'll leave now." When the 6 people behind Lin Wei saw that the strongest among them, Lin Wei, was torn in half, they were naturally terrified. After hurriedly opening their mouths, they wanted to shift the target elsewhere. However, Ling Jueyin ignored them. His death clone profundity closed in on them again. 2 more ripping sounds rang in the air, as 2 more people were torn apart. Blood and flesh splattered all over the place. The remaining 4 people's expressions changed drastically when they saw this. They no longer dared to take any chances. They quickly crushed the jade pendants they had taken out earlier and fled. Naturally, before they left, their faces were filled with reluctance. After all, they were all titled celestial emperors, and yet, they were forced to flee by Ling Jueyin. However, when they thought about their 3 temporary partners who were killed, they were relieved that Ling Jueyin did not attack them first. Otherwise, they would have been killed instead of the other 2. After the 4 people escaped, they looked at the gray-clad young man standing next to Duan Lingtian, the only true disciple of Feng Qingyang, the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven. Their eyes were filled with fear when they looked at the gray-clad young man standing next to Duan Lingtian. I didn't expect Duan Lingtian to have such a powerful person by his side. Based on the strength he displayed earlier, he's at least a 3-star god of war. Ling Jueyin could be said to be the most powerful person among those who had fought so far. Naturally, there were other 4-star gods of war and 5-star gods of war as well. However, most of them held back when they attacked. Unlike Duan Lingtian, Duan Lingtian had killed 3 young prodigies who were titled celestial emperors as soon as he attacked. This did not seem like an ordinary battle. It seemed more like a battle between enemies. He's so powerful. Zhang Tianyu and Wang Ting, who were standing behind Ling Jueyin, felt chills running up their spines when they saw Ling Jueyin killing 3 titled celestial emperors of war, who were on par with them. They looked at Ling Jueyin warily. "Who's Duan Lingtian's friend? He's at least a 3-star god of war, right? It's impossible for an ordinary 3-star god of war to possess such strength." Apart from Duan Lingtian, and Suli, who had heard about Ling Jueyin's strength from Duan Lingtian's words, everyone who had been paying attention to Ling Jueyin's battle instinctively turned to look at him. "Who's he? I've never heard of him. His mastery of the law of death is profound. His law of war is extraordinary, and he's decisive in killing. It's fine if he's only a 3-star god of war, or a 4-star god of war. However, if he's a 5-star god of war, he might be able to kill a 3-star god of war, or a 4-star god of war." Many people thought Ling Jueyin was a bloodthirsty person. Otherwise, why would he not give others a chance to kill him? Naturally, those who were killed in such a situation could only blame themselves for being unlucky. After all, everyone knew the rules. If they knew they were no match for Duan Lingtian, they should leave as soon as possible. Naturally, the heavenly emperors from the various Devata realms merely glanced at Ling Jueyin before they looked away. Based on Ling Jueyin's current strength, they did not pay much attention to him. Moreover, many heavenly emperors were disgusted by Ling Jueyin's ruthlessness. In the arena, the number of people who were eliminated and those who would be killed added up to more than 200 people. There were only about 700 people left, and the battle was still going on. However, after Ling Jueyin's ruthless act, no one dared to provoke Duan Lingtian and the others anymore. They only cared about killing each other, treating Duan Lingtian and the others as though they were invisible. In fact, some of them even brushed past Duan Lingtian and the others as they fought. Chi, 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 chi. When the sound of a sharp weapon piercing flesh rang in the air, a young man dressed in blood-red robes who wielded a saber made his move. The young man had a medium build and a cold expression on his face. His eyes were filled with killing intent. Upon closer inspection, one could see his robes were not blood-red. Instead, they were dark gray. Due to the excessive amount of blood, his robes were dyed red. Naturally, this was because he did not intentionally avoid the blood that spurted out from the bodies of the people he killed. It was as though he intentionally allowed the blood to stain his robes as a badge of honor for killing geniuses. Chapter 3463. Ling Jueyan and the red-clad young man's ferocious actions had frightened the other geniuses. As soon as they sensed danger, they hurriedly crushed their jade tokens. As long as the situation wasn't right, they would crush their jade tokens and leave. Being eliminated was better than dying. Most of the young geniuses present on the scene were elites in their respective regions. Although the Devata Realm's battle of the geniuses would make them famous, they would still be famous in their respective regions. We can't afford to offend them. I'll take my leave first. It's too dangerous. I'll wait until the third round to see if there's anyone I can defeat. Are you shameless? 3 against 1. Alright, I'll take my leave first. If any one of you makes it to the third round, I'll challenge that person to a duel and defeat him, or even kill him. Regardless of whether they were young geniuses with limited strength, or titled celestial emperors, all of them crushed their jade tokens and left. However, due to Ling Jueyan and the red-clad young man's actions, the second round of the Devata Realm's Battle of the Geniuses ended in less than 4 hours. 300 people emerged from the second round of the Devata Realm's Battle of Geniuses. Among the 300 people, more than 90% of them were young geniuses with strength comparable to titled celestial emperors. Most of them were 2-star gods of war or stronger. There were also a small number of people who had paid a hefty price for other young geniuses to help them pass the second round. Although these people's strength was only close to that of a titled celestial emperor, they were from prominent clans and had strong foundations. Even young geniuses who were stronger than them were tempted by the things they offered. Naturally, these people knew they were only able to pass the second round because they were protected by other people. They were destined to be eliminated in the third round. After the third round, the top 300 participants in the Devata Realm's Battle of Geniuses would be determined. The second round of the Devata Realm's Battle of the Geniuses has ended. The third round will begin in a month's time. Su Konghai, the Vice Palace Master of the Tidal Temple, said in a clear voice. In 3 days, the Tidal Temple will compile a list of the 300 people who made it to the next round and announce it here. After the list is announced, the 700 people who were eliminated today can spend some time to learn more about the 300 people who made it to the next round. Then, you can choose your opponent to challenge in a month. Cherish your challenge opportunities. Everyone only has 3 challenges. In the second round, the 700 people who were eliminated had a chance to revive in the third round. As long as they succeeded in challenging one of the 300 people who advanced today and successfully defeated the challenger, they would be able to advance to the fourth round. 1 month. Suli was surprised. I didn't expect that the third round would be held in a month. I feel like they are taking care of the 700 people who were eliminated today so that they can understand the 300 people who advanced today. Duan Lingtian shook his head. Duan Lingtian, thank you. At this moment, no matter if it was Zhang Tianyu or Wang Ting, both of them took the initiative to express their gratitude to Duan Lingtian. If it were not for Duan Lingtian, with their strength, they might not have been able to advance today. Naturally, they were under a lot of pressure now. After all, there would be many people who would challenge them in a month. At that time, it would be difficult for them to advance to the fourth round. All right. Duan Lingtian nodded. There's still a month left. Both of you should prepare yourselves. You'll be challenged in a month's time. Zhang Tianyu and Wang Ting smiled wryly when they heard Duan Lingtian's words. After the formation disappeared, they left the venue and returned to their rooms to cultivate. It was as though they did not want to waste any time. Like the two of them, there were many others who left in a hurry as well. Just as Duan Lingtian was about to leave with Su Li and Ling Jueyan, his master, Feng Qingyang, sent a voice transmission to him. Little Tian, stay for a while. An old friend of mine wants to see you. Upon hearing the voice transmission, Duan Lingtian bade farewell to Su Li and Ling Jueyan before he left for Feng Qingyang. At this moment, Feng Qingyang was still with Ding Fu, the heavenly emperor of the primeval heaven. Master, Senior Uncle Ding. After greeting Feng Qingyang and Ding Fu, Duan Lingtian looked at Wei Qi, who was standing behind Ding Fu, and greeted him with a smile. Senior brother Wei Qi. We meet again. Wei Qi smiled in response. On the other hand, Ding Fu looked at Duan Lingtian and said with a smile, Junior nephew Duan, your friend is too ruthless. I wanted to see your performance, but I didn't get to see it. It seems like I'll have to wait until the third round to see your performance. The Devata Realm's Battle of the Geniuses would begin in a month's time. The 700 people who were eliminated today would each have 3 chances to challenge their opponents. Duan Lingtian was the only true disciple of Feng Qingyang, the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven. One could only imagine how many challenges he would face on that day. Even if others were wary of him, they would send someone to test his strength. Based on the current situation, one thing was certain. Duan Lingtian was at least a 2-star god of war. Even Ding Fu, the heavenly emperor of the primeval heaven, could not help but feel shocked when he heard Duan Lingtian was a 2-star god of war, who was more than 600 years old. Even a 5-star god of war, who was more than 900 years old, would not have such strength when they were more than 600 years old. Only a 6-star god of war, who was less than 1,000 years old, would be able to possess the strength of a 2-star god of war when they were more than 600 years old. Junior nephew Duan, I'll be back to see your performance in a month's time. Ding Fu knew Feng Qingyang would be staying to see the others, so he smiled at Duan Lingtian. After bidding farewell to Feng Qingyang, he left with Wei Qi. The others also left one after another. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. In next to no time, 3 figures tore through the sky from afar and appeared before Duan Lingtian. One of them was someone Duan Lingtian had fought before. To be more precise, he had injured Duan Lingtian and sent him flying with a single blow. Although this was his first time meeting the other 2 at such a close distance, he knew who they were. They were none other than Gongsun Xianyuan, the heavenly emperor of the Yellow Arch Heaven. The third person was Yu Dongfang, the 4th true disciple of Gongsun Xianyuan. Yu Dongfang had a medium build, so he appeared short when he stood next to the tall and burly Tong Tuesday. However, the aura he exuded made up for his lack of height. He gave off an otherworldly and refined aura. Heavenly Emperor Feng, your clones from the Law of Earth are even stronger now that I've seen you fight. Gongsun Xianyuan, the heavenly emperor of the Xianyuan heaven, was a refined middle-aged man dressed in a golden dragon robe. His face was as fair as jade, and his eyebrows were slanted to his temples. At this moment, he was looking at Feng Qingyang and sighing emotionally. Previously, when Feng Qingyang came out of the Azura Hell, one of the 7 deadliest places in the Devata realms, it was rumored that he had attained godhood. Therefore, Gongsun Xianyuan had personally paid him a visit. Although the 2 of them did not officially spar, Gongsun Xianyuan could tell the difference between him and Feng Qingyang from their exchange of blows. Just the Law of Earth alone was enough to suppress him. In the past, Gongsun Xianyuan could fight Feng Qingyang to a standstill even if he used the Law of Destruction. However, at that time, Feng Qingyang's clones from the Law of Earth easily suppressed him. The strength of a god's divine energy was beyond imagination. Heavenly Emperor Xianyuan, you flatter me. It's just that I've fused an additional profundity. Feng Qingyang shook his head and smiled as he gestured for Gongsun Xianyuan to take a seat. At this moment, the 2 men standing behind Gongsun Xianyuan, Yu Dongfang and Tong Tu, bowed at Feng Qingyang. Greetings, Heavenly Emperor Feng. Duan Lingtian bowed at Gongsun Xianyuan as well. Greetings, Heavenly Emperor Xianyuan. I'm Duan Lingtian. Although Gongsun Xuanyuan's surname was Gongsun, not many people addressed him as Heavenly Emperor Gongsun. Most people referred to him as Heavenly Emperor Xianyuan. Naturally, Duan Lingtian addressed him as his master, Feng Qingyang. Martial nephew Duan, you're only slightly over 600 years old. It's amazing that you've achieved so much. Gongsun Xianyuan was very friendly to Duan Lingtian. I'm afraid your future achievements won't be lower than your master, Heavenly Emperor Feng. Before Duan Lingtian could reply, Gongsun Xianyuan looked at Feng Qingyang. Heavenly Emperor Feng, what do you think? Feng Qingyang smiled and said, I believe he'll surpass his master. This short sentence revealed Feng Qingyang's confidence in Duan Lingtian. Even Gongsun Xianyuan was shocked by Feng Qingyang's direct words. One had to know that before Feng Qingyang spoke, he thought that Feng Qingyang would be humble. However, he didn't expect Gongsun Xianyuan to be so straightforward and believe that his only true disciple would surpass him. Tong Tuesday. At this moment, Gongsun Xianyuan called out indifferently. Tong Tu stepped forward immediately. A hint of unwillingness flashed in his eyes before he cupped his fists and apologized to Duan Lingtian. Junior brother Duan, I apologize for my rudeness that day. Although Tong Tu was apologizing, it was not difficult for Duan Lingtian to see his unwillingness. It was obvious he was afraid of the Heavenly Emperor Xianyuan. There's no need for you to apologize. Duan Lingtian shook his head and looked at Tong Tu meaningfully. After all, I wasn't injured that day. You. Upon hearing Duan Lingtian's words and seeing Duan Lingtian's meaningful gaze, Tong Tu's expression turned unsightly. His celestial origin energy surged out of his body, before it was withdrawn in just a blink of an eye. Based on Duan Lingtian's performance in the first round of the Devata Realm's Battle of the Geniuses, Tong Tu was certain Duan Lingtian was stronger than him. Duan Lingtian ignored Tong Tu's dissatisfaction. He shifted his gaze to Gongsun Xianyuan, and his heart trembled. Heavens! This was Gongsun Xianyuan, the Yellow Emperor, one of the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors. However, the Yellow Emperor was sitting right in front of him. Chapter 3464. Duan Lingtian stared at Gongsun Xianyuan with a hint of uncontrollable excitement in his eyes. When Gongsun Xianyuan saw this scene, he couldn't help but be stunned. Martial nephew Duan, could it be that you've seen me before? The purple-clad young man did not look at him, as though he was looking at a stranger. Instead, it looked more like he was looking at a long-lost acquaintance. That was why Gongsun Xianyuan asked this question. However, there was one thing he was certain about. He had no recollection of this young man. It was more like he had never seen him before. Heavenly Emperor Xianyuan. Duan Lingtian took a deep breath before he said, It might sound exaggerated, but it's true. The mundane realm where I'm currently from is the same mundane realm where my master is from. However, my soul is from the Yanhuang planet in the Yanhuang realm. I grew up listening to legends about you. Upon hearing Duan Lingtian's words, not only the Heavenly Emperor Xianyuan, but even his 2 disciples and his master, Feng Qingyang, were taken aback. This was especially true for Feng Qingyang. He did not expect his disciple to have such a past. It wasn't that he hadn't heard of a soul traveling from one mundane realm to another mundane realm and transmigrating into the body of a dying person. However, most of them were just rumors, and he didn't really believe that they were true. However, he knew since his disciple had said it, it had to be true. Were you an outstanding person when you were on the Yanhuang planet? Gongsun Xianyuan asked with a solemn expression on his face. There was no hint of shock in his eyes. Instead, it was filled with astonishment. It was as though he could understand what Duan Lingtian meant. An outstanding person? Duan Lingtian pondered for a moment before he recalled his time on Earth in his previous life. Based on his strength and achievements at that time, it was not an exaggeration to say that he was an outstanding person. However, despite his thoughts, Duan Lingtian still asked Gongsun Xianyuan, Heavenly Emperor Xianyuan, what do you mean by outstanding person? It's outstanding in certain aspects, Gongsun Xianyuan replied. Gongsun Xianyuan said, I don't know if I count as. As Duan Lingtian spoke, he explained the background of his era on Earth. At the same time, he also revealed his identity at that time, and what he had done before his death in his previous life. If what you said is true, your achievements in that era can no longer be described as a hero. You can be called a peerless hero. Gongsun Xianyuan sighed as he looked at Duan Lingtian. I thought you died in the divine land, and your soul traveled to another mundane realm. I didn't expect your soul to travel to an island far away from the divine land. This kind of situation can only happen to the unparalleled world hero. Duan Lingtian was even more dumbfounded by Gongsun Xuanyuan's words. He had no idea why Gongsun Xianyuan would say such a thing. Xianyuan Tian, Senior Xianyuan, could it be that you know the reason why my soul transmigrated? It shouldn't be too different from what I've imagined. Gongsun Xianyuan looked at Duan Lingtian with bright eyes. Uncontrollable excitement could be seen in the depths of his eyes. Do you have 99 heavenly veins in your body? 99 heavenly veins. Not only were his two true disciples stunned by Gongsun Xuanyuan's words, but even Feng Qingyang's eyes narrowed slightly. He instinctively looked at Duan Lingtian. He had only found out about Duan Lingtian's 99 heavenly veins after meeting Duan Lingtian. Senior, how did you know? Duan Lingtian asked in surprise. As long as the person inside his body was not a god, even if he was surrounded by divine consciousness, he would be able to block the person's divine consciousness from entering his body. Could it be that a divine spirit had probed him and told Gongsun Xianyuan about this? However, that was not very likely. After all, his master had left a divine spirit mark on him. If a divine spirit probed him with their divine spirit, his master would be able to inform him immediately. He might even be able to block the divine spirit for a short period of time. Naturally, he would only be able to block the divine spirit for a short period of time to warn the divine spirit. If the divine spirit insisted on probing him, his master's divine spirit mark would not be able to stop it. Ha 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 ha. Gongsun Xianyuan laughed heartily. Then he looked at Duan Lingtian and said, Junior nephew Duan, please wait for a moment. I'll call the two old fellows over. I'll tell you why I guessed you have 99 heavenly veins when I heard about your soul transmigration. Soon after, two figures appeared in front of Duan Lingtian after Gongsun Xianyuan sent out the voice transmissions. One of them was the Emperor of the Jade Emperor Heaven, Yu Hao Tian. The other person was the Grand Sun Celestial Emperor, Tathagata, the Hallmaster of the Tidal Temple's branch in the Xianyuan Heaven. The Jade Emperor, Tathagata. Naturally, Duan Lingtian was no stranger to these two people. Naturally, this was his first time meeting them in person. Hao Tian Sakyamune. After everyone greeted them, Gongsun Xianyuan looked at Duan Lingtian and said bluntly, the Wind Celestial Emperor's only true disciple should have the flaming yellow physique on planet Yin Huang. Tathagata was also known as Sakyamune. Before Gongsun Xianyuan ascended, he had been calling him Sakyamune, and he still called him Sakyamune. Perhaps, the only people who knew Tathagata's other name were those from planet Yin Huang in the Yin Huang realm. Flaming yellow physique. Upon hearing Gongsun Xuanyuan's words, Duan Lingtian and Feng Qingyang were not the only ones who were confused. Even Yu Dongfang and Tong Tu, Gongsun Xuanyuan's true disciples, were confused. At this moment, Yu Hao Tian and Rulai's gazes landed on Duan Lingtian in unison. There was a hint of surprise in their eyes. They had received a message from Gongsun Xianyuan. In the message, Gongsun Xianyuan had only said that he had something important to tell them, but he did not mention that he had discovered the flaming yellow physique. Xianyuan, are you sure? Yu Hao Tian asked solemnly as he looked at Gongsun Xianyuan. There's no mistake, Gongsun Xianyuan replied. Gongsun Xianyuan said, his experience is exactly the same as the flaming yellow physique. Furthermore, he admitted that he has 99 heavenly veins in his body. I didn't expect to see the flaming yellow physique again, after so many years. Moreover, he has even become a titled celestial emperor. When Gongsun Xianyuan had confirmed that Duan Lingtian had 99 heavenly veins, he had looked at Duan Lingtian with glowing eyes, as though he was looking at a rare treasure instead of a living person. Upon seeing this, Duan Lingtian felt goosebumps rising on his skin. He even regretted revealing that his soul came from planet Yin Huang in the Yin Huang realm. The reason why he said it was because it was no longer a secret to him, and no one would care about it. In the Devata realms, there were many strange people and strange things. Among them, There was no lack of strange things that happened to Duan Lingtian. However, it did not cross Duan Lingtian's mind that not only was the heavenly emperor of the Xian Yuan heaven shocked, but even the heavenly emperor of the Jade Emperor heaven and Tathagata, the palace master of the Tidal Temple's sub-hall of the Xian Yuan heaven, were shocked as well. Flaming yellow physique. At this moment, Tathagata shifted his gaze from Duan Lingtian to Feng Qingyang and said, "Wind Heavenly Emperor, I've had many disciples in my life, but none of them were true disciples. Since you're my only true disciple, I wonder if you're willing to let me take you as my last disciple?" Upon hearing Tathagata's words, Feng Qingyang glanced at Tathagata indifferently and said, "You should ask my disciple, not me." At the same time, Feng Qingyang sent a voice transmission to Duan Lingtian. "Although I don't know what the flaming yellow physique is, I'm sure there's a secret behind it since they're so concerned about it. However, since Tathagata is already a god, it's best for you to stay away from him to avoid any danger. There are many unique physiques in the Devata realms, but this is the first time I've heard of the flaming yellow physique. Many titled celestial emperors, and even heavenly emperors, would want to possess the bodies of celestial emperors and heavenly emperors. As long as they don't die prematurely, it's almost certain that they'll be able to attain godhood. I've also heard a rumor in the past, but I'm not sure if it's true or not. A human with 99 heavenly veins who possesses a unique physique has a potential that's not inferior to a divine beast," Feng Qingyang said. In the past, Feng Qingyang did not tell Duan Lingtian about this, because he was worried it would cause Duan Lingtian to slack off on his cultivation. Everyone knew that they had 99 heavenly veins, and if nothing unexpected happened, they would definitely become gods. Under such circumstances, many people would no longer cultivate as hard as they did before, because they subconsciously felt that they were the seeds of gods. "I didn't tell you about this because I was worried it would affect your cultivation." In the end, Feng Qingyang still explained, "I understand, Master." After listening to Feng Qingyang's words, Duan Lingtian looked at Tathagata, who had shifted his gaze from Feng Qingyang to him. Before Tathagata could speak, he said, "Pavilion Master Tathagata, I, Duan Lingtian, will only acknowledge one master in my life. That's my current master, Feng Qingyang. From now on, no matter how powerful a god or a supreme expert is, I will never acknowledge him as my master." Duan Lingtian's words killed Tathagata's thoughts. Upon hearing this, Tathagata's eyes flashed. However, his expression remained calm as he said, "Since you've made up your mind, I won't force you." After he finished speaking, he looked at Feng Qingyang and said, "Wind Heavenly Emperor, 10 years after the Devata Realm's Battle of the Geniuses, I'll head to the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven and have a battle with you. If you lose, you'll step down from your position as Heavenly Emperor." A hint of killing intent flashed in the depths of Tathagata's eyes when he finished speaking. Chapter 3465. Anytime. Upon hearing Tathagata's words, Feng Qingyang lifted his head lazily and glanced at Tathagata. "Farewell." Tathagata glanced at Feng Qingyang before he nodded at Duan Lingtian and turned to leave. As soon as he turned around to leave, Duan Lingtian felt a powerful divine consciousness sweeping toward him and shrouding his entire body. It made him feel as though he was a lone boat in the vast ocean, drifting aimlessly. However, Duan Lingtian suddenly felt a burning sensation between his eyebrows. It was the divine consciousness mark left behind by his master, Feng Qingyang. It was a gray sword mark. As soon as it appeared, it turned into countless divine consciousness, sword chi that swept out in all directions. Alas, it was still too late. The divine consciousness that shrouded Duan Lingtian seemed to have intentionally avoided Duan Lingtian's glabella. When the divine consciousness mark appeared between Duan Lingtian's eyebrows, it had already scanned Duan Lingtian's body. Although it was only a rough scan, it was not difficult for it to find out how many heavenly veins Duan Lingtian had in his body. "It's the Flaming Emperor physique." Tathagata's voice echoed in the distance and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Tathagata's sudden scan caused Duan Lingtian's expression to darken. Even Gongsun Xianyuan, the heavenly emperor of the Xianyuan heaven, and Yu Haotian, the heavenly emperor of the Jade Emperor heaven, felt awkward. They did not expect Tathagata to be so brazen. Did he forget that the flaming emperor physique's master was Feng Qingyang, the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven? As soon as Gongsun Xianyuan and Yu Haotian thought about it, Feng Qingyang snorted coldly. Then, a gray divine consciousness shot out from between his eyebrows and turned into a sword in the blink of an eye. It whistled as it shot toward Tathagata's divine consciousness. Whoosh! The divine will sword appeared, as if it could destroy everything. In just a blink of an eye, Tathagata's voice rang in the air. Feng Qingyang, I'll meet you in the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven in 100 years. 100 years. Duan Lingtian was stunned by Tathagata's words. Didn't Tathagata, the great sun celestial emperor, say he would challenge his master 10 years after the Devata realm's battle of the geniuses? Why did it become 100 years now? Hiss! Hiss! At the same time, both Gongsun Xianyuan and Yu Haotian sucked in a mouthful of cold air. To be able to make Tathagata change his words, it meant that Feng Qingyang's spiritual sense attack had injured Tathagata badly. At the very least, his divine soul was severely injured. Otherwise, he wouldn't have delayed the battle 10 years later to 100 years later. 100 years later, if you dare to come, I will definitely kill you. This was Feng Qingyang's response to Tathagata. His expression was calm, without joy or sorrow. After Tathagata left, no one spoke. After Tathagata left, Feng Qingyang looked at Gongsun Xianyuan and asked, Heavenly Emperor Xianyuan, can you tell us about the Yanhuang physique? Gongsun Xianyuan smiled wryly. He could see the displeasure in Feng Qingyang's eyes. Heavenly Emperor Feng, I didn't expect Tathagata to be like this. If I knew, I wouldn't have allowed him to come. Feng Qingyang's expression eased slightly when he heard Gongsun Xianyuan's words. At this moment, Gongsun Xianyuan continued to say, as for the Yanhuang physique, it's a crazy idea that the powerhouses of the Yanhuang progeny came up with after many years of research on the unique physiques in the Devata realms. We discovered many similarities between the unique physiques and the unique physiques. Based on our research, there were traces of human activity. Most of it was due to the influence of formations. After many years of research, we returned to our hometown, the mundane realm, Yanhuang realm, and set up the formation that gave birth to the Yanhuang physique in our hometown planet Yanhuang. However, we only know a little about the formation. We basically copied it from others. For this reason, we don't know how the Yanhuang physique would be born on planet Yanhuang. It's not like there haven't been any Yanhuang physiques over the years. However, those with the Yanhuang physique were born through other methods. Their souls were powerful, but they were stuck at the great overarching golden celestial stage after ascending to the Devata realms. We allowed a few Yanhuang physiques to ascend on their own, but they died in the celestial ascension pool as soon as they ascended. Nobody attacked them. It's as though the energy of the celestial ascension pool caused their souls and bodies to explode. They couldn't coexist with each other, so they died instantly. As for those who didn't ascend to the Devata realms, they died the moment they broke through to the great overarching golden celestial stage, just like those who had ascended to the Devata realms. Gongsun Xianyuan paused for a moment before he looked at Duan Lingtian and said, those people with the Yanhuang physique have extremely high innate talent and comprehension ability. They also have 99 heavenly veins in their bodies. However, all of them died before they could break through to the great overarching golden celestial stage. We knew there must be a problem with the formation we set up. However, it was an imitation of a formation. It was extremely complicated, and we couldn't figure it out. In the end, we gave up and stopped caring about the Yanhuang physique. In just a blink of an eye, thousands of years have passed. I didn't expect to meet someone with the Yanhuang physique here. Gongsun Xianyuan continued to look at Duan Lingtian as he said, the formation we imitated isn't just for show. Otherwise, it wouldn't have given birth to so many people with the Yanhuang physique. However, we didn't encounter anyone with the Yanhuang physique whose soul had transmigrated to another mundane realm. Even if he did, we wouldn't have known if he didn't say he was a transmigrator. Perhaps they died when they were growing up. Or perhaps they're currently in some Devata realm. It's also possible that they're somewhere in the Jade Emperor heaven right now. Gongsun Xianyuan glanced at Yu Hao Tian instinctively. The heavenly emperor of the Jade Emperor heaven was one of the people who had participated in the creation of the Yin Huang physique. Naturally, Tathagata was one of them as well. Soul transmigrated. Duan Lingtian tried to suppress the shock in his heart. For a long time, he had been wondering how his soul had transmigrated from Earth to another mundane realm. He had been searching for an answer, but he had not been able to find it. However, after listening to Gongsun Xuanyuan's explanation, Duan Lingtian felt he had found the answer. The formation you imitated to create a special physique. Is there someone like me among them who transmigrated? Duan Lingtian asked. Yes. Gongsun Xianyuan nodded. However, their souls didn't transmigrate to other realms. They seemed to have set up a series of formations in the formation, allowing their souls to transmigrate to their targets with the special physique they obtained through transmigration. This is completely different from your situation. The reason why your soul transmigrated indiscriminately should be because the formation we set up isn't complete. It's caused by a flaw in the formation. Gongsun Xuanyuan's words were laced with embarrassment. Duan Lingtian was rendered speechless by Gongsun Xuanyuan's words. As it turned out, it was not an accident that his soul had transmigrated. It was caused by the formation Gongsun Xianyuan and the others had set up. It was an accident that his soul had transmigrated to another mundane realm. I only thought of the formation we set up back then when I heard you talk about your transmigration experience. I asked you if you have 99 heavenly veins, because I wanted to confirm your identity and see if you have the flaming yellow physique that we created. Gongsun Xianyuan continued to explain. The corner of Duan Lingtian's mouth twitched. He did not expect Gongsun Xianyuan and the others to transmigrate his soul to another mundane realm. Gongsun Xianyuan and the others had set up an immature formation to imitate others. However, it's a blessing in disguise for you. Gongsun Xianyuan looked at Duan Lingtian and said with a sigh, since you have the Yin Huang physique, as long as you don't slack off, you'll definitely become a god in the future. In fact, it's difficult for ordinary celestials to become a god. However, it won't be the same for you. As long as you become a 10 Directions celestial emperor and continue to cultivate, you'll definitely become a god. Perhaps, you might even become a god before Hao Tian and I do. As Gongsun Xianyuan spoke, he looked at Yu Hao Tian, the heavenly emperor of the Jade Emperor heaven. A hint of envy could be seen in Yu Hao Tian's eyes as he looked at Duan Lingtian. As for Tong Tu, Gongsun Xuanyuan's fourth true disciple, he was green with envy. Although Yu Dongfang's expression was calm, he could not hide the shock in the depths of his eyes. Duan Lingtian. A hint of fear flashed in Gongsun Xuanyuan's eyes as though he had recalled something. He looked at Duan Lingtian and said, although you're considered to have the Yin Huang physique to a certain extent, we won't demand anything from you because of this. After all, you're only as strong as you are today, because of your own efforts. I only hope that if we need a favor from you one day, you'll give it to us. A hint of worry flashed in Gongsun Xuanyuan's eyes when he reached the end of his sentence. Of course, that's not a problem. Duan Lingtian nodded. Although he was considered to be a test subject of Gongsun Xianyuan and the others, to a certain extent, it was because of Gongsun Xianyuan and the others that he was able to survive in his previous life. Since Gongsun Xianyuan had asked for a favor, he naturally had to return it. After all, Duan Lingtian did not like owing people favors. Thank you. After thanking Duan Lingtian, the heavenly emperor of the Xianyuan heaven bade farewell to Duan Lingtian and Feng Qingyang before he left. At this moment, Yu Hao Tian, the heavenly emperor of the Jade Emperor heaven, left as well. After Yu Dongfang and Tong Tu left, Duan Lingtian's lips twitched again as he looked at Gongsun Xianyuan and Yu Hao Tian's backs. These people stand at the peak of the Devata realms, and yet, they're willing to conduct such an experiment for the sake of a special physique. They really know how to have fun. On the other side, Yu Dongfang and Tong Tu returned to their wooden houses. Naturally, they had to part ways with their master, and the heavenly emperor of the Jade Emperor Heaven. After the duo left, Yu Hao Tian, the heavenly emperor of the Jade Emperor Heaven, looked at Gongsun Xianyuan and asked, Xianyuan, why did you ask for a favor from him? Are you worried that old bald donkey would suffer a loss? Chapter 3466. Or are you worried that he'll be defeated by the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven? Yu Hao Tian asked. Both. Gongsun Xianyuan sighed. A complicated expression could be seen on his face as he said, both of us know that the current Tathagata is only half a Tathagata. His will is mostly controlled by the old monk we encountered in the undead world, one of the 7 deadliest places in the Devata realms. That old monk is evil by nature. After he forcefully merged his soul with Tathagata's soul, Tathagata's temperament became much more ruthless. Earlier, he checked Duan Lingtian's body to see if Duan Lingtian has the flaming yellow physique. I suspect he wants to possess Duan Lingtian's body, although most of his will is controlled by Tathagata's will, at least, not all of it. I can sense he'll try to escape from Tathagata's body if he has the chance. After all, he doesn't have 100% autonomy in Tathagata's body. He only has 60% autonomy at most. Gongsun Xianyuan said, It seems like the flaming yellow physique we created is very tempting. Even that old bald donkey who seems to be a god has his eyes on Duan Lingtian's body. Yu Hao Tian said as he sighed. Then, as though he had recalled something, he asked, If that old bald donkey leaves Tathagata's body, will Tathagata's soul recover? Gongsun Xianyuan nodded. Yes, but it'll take at least 10,000 years for him to recover. After all, Tathagata's soul has been severely injured. That's because his soul is also a god's soul. Otherwise, it'll take at least 10,000 years for him to recover. Gongsun Xianyuan said, Why didn't you warn them earlier? Why didn't you tell them the situation and ask them to show mercy? Yu Hao Tian asked. How should I warn them? Gongsun Xianyuan shook his head. I can't possibly tell them that Tathagata is no longer the Tathagata of the past. If that old monk succeeds in seizing Duan Lingtian's body, Tathagata will regain his freedom. But if that old monk fails, he will be in danger, which is equivalent to bringing Tathagata into danger. Unless a supreme expert makes a move, otherwise, no one can destroy that old monk without harming Tathagata. Tathagata had been friends with Gongsun Xianyuan for many years. Naturally, he wouldn't let anything happen to his good friend. It was also because of this that he held back his words in front of Feng Qingyang and Duan Lingtian. Although he had some friendship with Feng Qingyang, it was naturally incomparable to his friendship with Tathagata. As for Duan Lingtian, it was his first day meeting him. On one hand, you asked for a favor from Duan Lingtian, so that you could save Tathagata's life at a critical moment. But on the other hand, you also hoped that Tathagata could regain his freedom, so you didn't remind them. The current Tathagata is no longer the Tathagata of the past, and he most likely has his eyes set on Duan Lingtian's body. Yu Haoyan could see everything clearly now. Of course, he could understand Gongsun Xuanyuan's decision. If he were in Gongsun Xuanyuan's shoes, he would have made the same choice. I have no intention of harming the innocent. However, when there's no way to get the best of both worlds, I had no choice but to make this choice. When Gongsun Xianyuan said these words, a hint of guilt flashed in the depths of his eyes. Naturally, this guilt was because of Duan Lingtian. Let nature take its course. If that old monk fails, we'll ask Duan Lingtian for a favor, and ask him to spare his life. After all, his life and death are tied together with Tathagata's life and death. Yu Haoyan sighed and said, If there's a second time, we won't ask again. After all, when we first met Tathagata, as his friends, we've already done our best to help him. If that old monk takes Duan Lingtian's body, we'll do our best to protect his family, so that his family can live a life without worries. This will show our guilt. Gongsun Xianyuan agreed with Yu Haoyan's words. I agree. Duan Lingtian, naturally, was unaware of the private conversation between Gongsun Xianyuan the heavenly emperor of the Yellow Origin Heaven, and Yu Haotian, the Jade Emperor Heaven. After Gongsun Xinyuan and the others left, Duan Lingtian and Feng Qingyang stayed for a while before leaving. Duan Lingtian stayed because his master Feng Qingyang wanted to replant the divine spirit mark between his eyebrows. The divine spirit mark he had planted earlier had already been used. I have a feeling Tathagata is plotting something against you. However, don't worry in return. With my divine spirit mark, I'll be notified immediately if he makes a move on you. I'll be able to protect you as soon as possible, Feng Qingyang said to Duan Lingtian. Moreover, I don't think he'll make a move in the heavenly palace of the primeval heaven. If the Tidal Temple Masters make a move on the young geniuses during the Devata Realm's Battle of the Geniuses, he'll be severely injured even if he doesn't die. A cold glint flashed across Feng Qingyang's eyes as he continued. Furthermore, I've severely injured his divine soul earlier. Even with the help of a rare treasure, it'll take at least 100 years for him to fully recover. As long as I'm nearby, I don't think he'll make a move on you. The divine spirit mark is just a precaution. After parting ways with Feng Qingyang, Duan Lingtian returned to his wooden hut in the heavenly palace of the primeval heaven, where the young geniuses, who were participating in the Devata Realm's Battle of the Geniuses, were staying. At this moment, many young geniuses were gathered outside the wooden huts, discussing something in groups of 3 to 5. The eyes of the young geniuses brightened when they saw Duan Lingtian. How strong do you think this disciple of the legendary heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven is? Rumor has it that he's as strong as a 2-star god of war. I'm not too sure about his strength, but the gray-clad young man next to him, who's skilled in the law of death, is at least a 3-star god of war. The gray-clad young man is Ling Jueyin. He came here with the people from Feng Qingtian's Tidal Temple. According to the people from Feng Qingtian's Tidal Temple, Ling Jueyin is definitely stronger than a 3-star god of war. Does this mean Ling Jueyin is most likely a 4-star god of war? After Duan Lingtian made his appearance, the atmosphere in the square became livelier. Even after Duan Lingtian returned to his wooden hut, many people were still discussing him. I'm sure many people will challenge this disciple of the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven in the 3rd round of the Devata Realm's Battle of the Geniuses. At that time, we'll be able to see how strong he is. Based on what I know, there are even 3-star gods of war who want to challenge him. I can't wait to see the battle between a 3-star god of war and Duan Lingtian. Will Duan Lingtian be a match for him? 3 days later, the list of names that Su Konghai, the vice palace master of the main hall of the Tidal Temple, who was in charge of the Devata Realm's Battle of the Geniuses, appeared in the sky above the Devata Realm's Battle of the Geniuses. At this moment, many people were looking at the words on the list. The names of the 300 people who advanced to the 2nd round of the Devata Realm's Battle of the Geniuses are as follows. After that, a list of names appeared on the list. At the end of each name, there was at least some information about the Devata Realm, indicating that the young genius was from a certain Devata realm. As for those whose identities were clear, they even indicated their identities. Even the strength they had displayed so far was indicated. For example, there was a line of information after Duan Lingtian's name. He's from the solitary destructive heaven, the only true disciple of Feng Qingyang, the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven. He's only slightly over 600 years old. He's not affected by the 1st round of the Devata Realm's Battle of the Geniuses. His strength is suspected to be at least a 2-star god of war. For example, Su Li. He's from the Thousand Tribulations sword sect in the Jade Emperor Heaven. He's only slightly over 600 years old. He's not affected by the 1st round of the Devata Realm's Battle of the Geniuses. His strength is suspected to be at least a 2-star god of war. For example, there was a line of information after Ling Jueyin's name. He's from Feng Qingtian. He's suspected to be at least a 3-star god of war in the 2nd round of the Devata Realm's Battle of the Geniuses. There were more than 300 names, which meant that there were more than 300 lines. Some people's introductions were even longer. Even those with a photographic memory would have to look at it for a while. It's really detailed. Duan Lingtian was called over by Su Li. When Su Li saw the information about him and Duan Lingtian, he couldn't help but click his tongue in astonishment. It seems like the title temple intentionally recorded this information. It's obvious. Duan Lingtian nodded. Duan Lingtian, look at that. Under Su Li's guidance, Duan Lingtian saw a line of words introducing the third true disciple of Gongsun Xianyuan, Yu Dongfang. Yu Dongfang was from the Yellow Yuan Heaven. He was the third true disciple of Gongsun Xianyuan, the heavenly emperor of the Yellow Yuan Heaven. He had killed a 3-star god of war, and was suspected to be at least a 4-star god of war. Up until now, he had only revealed the strength of a 2-star god of war. Under Yu Dongfang's name was Tong Tu, the fourth true disciple of Gongsun Xianyuan, the heavenly emperor of the Yellow Yuan Heaven. Tong Tu was from the Yellow Yuan Heaven. He was the fourth true disciple of Gongsun Xianyuan, the heavenly emperor of the Yellow Yuan Heaven. He had been injured by Duan Lingtian when he was caught off guard. His strength was close to that of a 2-star god of war, but he was not a 2-star god of war yet. The title temple is clearly trying to draw hatred to you, Duan Lingtian said with a frown on his face. Su Li smiled mockingly. Duan Lingtian shook his head. He did not expect the people from the title temple would be so senseless. Soon after, many people in the surroundings saw Tong Tu's introduction and couldn't help but laugh. Their laughter was filled with ridicule. In the crowd, Duan Lingtian noticed an icy cold gaze that was filled with hatred, and he instinctively raised his head to look over. With a glance, he saw the robust young man staring at him from afar with an extremely unsightly expression. It was none other than Tong Tuesday. Tong Tu was the fourth true disciple of the heavenly emperor of the Yellow Yuan Heaven. Yu Dongfang stood next to Tong Tu with a calm expression on his face. When he saw Duan Lingtian looking at him, he smiled and nodded at him. Yes. Chapter 3467. Tang Sanpao is from the mysterious Wonder Heaven? Su Li exclaimed in surprise. Duan Lingtian shifted his gaze away from the 2 true disciples of the heavenly emperor of the Xianyuan heavenly emperor. He followed Su Li's gaze and saw Tang Sanpao's name. He was from the mysterious Wonder Heaven, and based on his performance in the first round of the Devata Realm's Battle of Geniuses, he was suspected to be a 2-star god of war. There was no other information about him. Just like the others, he seemed rather mysterious among the 300 names. It did not cross Duan Lingtian's mind that the young man who approached him, as if they were close the first time they met, actually had such extraordinary strength. He did not have the demeanor of an expert at all. Duan Lingtian noticed that when he swept his gaze over the 300 names, there were a dozen or so people who said they were suspected to have the strength of a 4-star god of war or above. But none of them said they were suspected to have the strength of a 5-star god of war or above. None of them are suspected to be 5-star gods of war, Su Li speculated. However, there must be 5-star gods of war among the people who are suspected to be 4-star gods of war or stronger. It's just that they haven't revealed their strength yet. Perhaps there's no one in the same generation who's worthy of them making a move. Duan Lingtian nodded. Of course, it's possible that someone has seen them display their strength, but that person is either dead or didn't spread the news. That's why no one knows their strength. As soon as Duan Lingtian and Su Li brought up this topic, the sky above the Devata Realm's Battle of Geniuses became lively. Many people began to discuss this matter. As more and more people gathered, Duan Lingtian called out to Su Li before the two of them left quietly. On their way back, they bumped into Tang Sanpao. Tang Sanpao said with a sullen expression on his face, "Why didn't you call me when you went to look at the name list? That's too much, right? You didn't ask us to call you either." Su Li smiled. Tang Sanpao glared at Su Li angrily. Then he said goodbye and left. Duan Lingtian and Su Li returned to their respective wooden houses and waited for the third round of the Devata Realm's Genius Battle to begin 27 days later. compared to the first and second rounds of the Devata Realms Genius Battle. The third round of the Devata Realms Genius Battle would take a long time. Time flew by like a white steed flitting by. A month passed in the blink of an eye. The third round of the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses was about to begin. In this round, the 300 people who advanced in the previous round would be challenged by the 700 people who were eliminated in the previous round. Apart from the 700 people who had been eliminated, many of the 300 people who had advanced to the next round were also looking through the list compiled by the Title Temple to see if there was anyone they could deal with. These people either didn't have much confidence in themselves or were worried that someone stronger would eliminate them. Since they were prepared in advance, even if they were eliminated, they still had a chance to turn things around. In the third round of the Devata Realms Genius Battle, not only would the 700 people who were eliminated in the previous round have a chance to challenge someone else, but even the 300 people who were eliminated today would also have a chance to challenge someone else. In short, the number of people was fixed, but the number of people would change constantly. This would continue until no one challenged anyone else. Although the third round of the Devata Realms Genius Battle is divided into 10 battles at the same time, I'm afraid it'll take a few days. Tang Sanpao muttered to himself. Duan Lingtian and the others were still sitting in the same seats they had been sitting in a month ago. Apart from them, even He Jianyi, who was eliminated in the second round, had come. In fact, He Jianyi was already mentally prepared for his elimination in the second round. In fact, he knew he would not be able to go far in the Devata Realms Genius Battle. He had only come because he wanted to see the best young geniuses from the various Devata realms. Moreover, such an opportunity was hard to come by. Ordinary people would not be able to come and watch the battles. In fact, He Jianyi was not the only one who had such thoughts. At this moment, there were still more than 2,000 young geniuses present. Whether it was the 1,000 people who were eliminated, or the 1,000 people who were eliminated today, all of them were present. Swoosh! Under everyone's watchful eyes, Su Konghai, the Vice Palace Master of the Title Temple's main hall, appeared in the sky above the Devata Realms Genius Battle like a ghost. After a few moments, he turned around and looked at the crowd. Today, the third round of the Devata Realms Genius Battle will begin. The 300 people who have advanced to the fourth round will be confirmed. This round is different from the previous round. You can only rely on yourself and not others. Those who relied on others in the second round won't be able to rely on luck in this round, since it's a one-on-one battle. I'm sure all of you have already heard about the rules, so I won't waste my breath. At the same time, Su Konghai raised his hand. Suddenly, rows of densely packed words appeared in the air above him. They were the 300 names that had disappeared a few days ago, as well as the introductions behind the names. This formation mirror image is controlled by a person from the Title Temple. It can erase the names of those who have been defeated and replace them with the names of those who have succeeded. Everyone has 3 chances to challenge the fourth round of the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses. If you're unable to challenge the fourth round after 3 times, you won't be able to advance to the fourth round. As soon as Su Konghai finished speaking, many young geniuses turned to look at the rows of names. The heavenly emperors and high-ranking officials from the various Devata realms, who had not seen the list before, were also looking at it. There's no one who seems to be a 5-star god of war. It seems like all the young geniuses have hidden their strength well this time. Based on past experiences, the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses is always the most exciting. Many young geniuses who haven't had the chance to show off their skills will be able to do so this time. I'm looking forward to it. Most of the heavenly emperors present on the scene had participated in the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses. It was obvious they were looking forward to the upcoming Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses. At this moment, Su Konghai's voice rang in the air again. Now the 10 of you, state your target. As soon as Su Konghai said this, a person immediately flew out and arrived in the sky above the arena. He looked directly at the 3 people sitting together in the spectator seats and sneered. I, Huang Bin of Spirit Overarching Heaven, challenge Qiu Yenjin of Langji Heaven. The three people's expressions darkened when they heard Huang Bin's words. What? The three of you defeated me in the previous round, but you don't dare to challenge me now? Huang Bin sneered when he saw the person he had targeted did not make a move. I remember them. At this moment, a young genius among the spectators recognized Huang Bin and the three men. Among the three men, one of them is almost as strong as a titled celestial emperor, while the other two are titled celestial emperors. However, based on the strength Huang Bin displayed earlier, it's clear he's one of the strongest one-star gods of war. I remember him as well. A month ago, his opponents defeated him in a 3-on-1 battle. His revenge came so quickly. Is he challenging the non-titled celestial emperor, or one of the other two celestial emperors? If I were him, I'd definitely send the non-titled celestial emperor to challenge him. Amidst the commotion, Su Konghai's voice resounded in the air. After being challenged, if you don't enter the ring within 10 breaths, you'll be deemed to have admitted defeat. Now you have 5 breaths to consider. Humph! One of the young men who was targeted by Huang Bin scoffed. You're a titled celestial emperor, but you dare to challenge me? I'm not even a titled celestial emperor. How shameless of you! Huang Bin said nonchalantly. What a joke! If you're so shameless, why did you join forces to eliminate me in the previous round? The challenge ended when the person who was challenged did not dare to challenge Huang Bin. Huang Bin successfully advanced to the next round. His name also replaced that person's name, and hung in the air, clearly appearing before everyone's eyes. If I could challenge only one person, I'd have defeated all 3 of you. Huang Bin looked at the 3 people coldly before he left the arena and said coldly, Of course, if you have the guts, you can challenge me again after you're eliminated. I'll welcome you with open arms. As soon as he finished speaking, he left the arena. The 3 people were, naturally, infuriated by Huang Bin's words. After Huang Bin left the stage, he didn't forget to say to the audience in a clear voice, Everyone, if you want to challenge someone, you can choose one of those 2 people. Choose as you wish. Their strength is only at the level of a normal 1-star war god. Huang Bin's words infuriated the 3 people even more. After Huang Bin left the arena, there were indeed people who challenged the other 2 out of the 3. They successfully defeated them and replaced them. Thank you, brother Huang Bin. Haha, thank you, brother. The 2 people who successfully challenged Huang Bin smiled and thanked him from afar. Naturally, this was only a small interlude. The number of people in the arena remained at 10. 10 people would challenge the other 10 people. After the battle ended, 2 people would leave the arena, and another person would challenge the others. After about 15 minutes, a young man dressed in a brown-yellow long robe stood in the air. His gaze landed on Duan Lingtian and the others before he finally locked his gaze on one person. I, Si Kong Yufeng, Qing Qi Tian, challenge Wang Ting of the solitary destructive heaven. Wang Ting sat behind Duan Lingtian, and although her expression didn't change when faced with the challenge, her gaze became slightly more serious. It was obvious she was mentally prepared for this. Isn't this Wang Ting the woman who had a breakthrough in the first round? It's her. As soon as Wang Ting stood up and stepped into the air, many people recognized her. Chapter 3468. During the first round of the Devata Realm's Battle of the Geniuses, there were a few people who had broken through during the battle. Therefore, most of the young geniuses present at that time had paid attention to them. Why didn't I think of challenging those who had just broken through? A young genius who had just broken through said regretfully, If I had challenged one of them, I wouldn't have had to fight so hard earlier. Even if they have the strength of a titled celestial emperor, there must be a limit to their strength. That guy is really smart. He actually chose to challenge the only woman among the few who had just broken through. It's obvious that Wang Ting is a pushover in his eyes. Similar discussions could be heard in the spectator seats. The people who had just broken through during the first round of the Devata Realm's Battle of the Geniuses had also attracted a lot of attention. Some people even began to inquire about their names and origins. Naturally, there were also some people who had heard about the names and origins of the few people who had just broken through during the first round of the Devata realm. Swoosh! Following the defeat of one person and the successful advancement of another person, a ghost-like figure flashed out from the eastern spectator stands and quickly called out a challenge. And the person he challenged was also the person who had made a breakthrough in the first round. The latter's expression changed slightly when he heard his name was called out. However, he still stepped forward. Damn it! He's really fast. Now there's one less person. Many young geniuses cursed. Just as Wang Ting entered the arena, and before she could even fight with the person who challenged her, another person in the arena was defeated, and another person advanced. Then, dozens of figures flashed out from the spectator seats like lightning, and went straight to the arena. What a joke! Currently, two people who had just broken through during the first round of the Devata realm were being challenged. If they did not hurry up, they would not be able to defeat the last person. However, out of the dozens of figures, only the fastest person entered the arena. The rest were sent flying by Qian Konghai's sleeve, but they were not hurt. They felt as if they were slowly being pushed back to the top of the spectator seats by waves that were neither fast nor slow. Damn it! He beat us to it. How's that brat so fast? The group of young geniuses who were pushed back had unsightly expressions on their faces. The young genius who entered the arena first, a young man in blue, had a complacent smile on his face. He immediately opened his mouth and said that he wanted to challenge the last person who had made a breakthrough in the first round and had not yet entered the arena. Meanwhile, bang! A loud noise rang in the air, attracting everyone's attention. In just a blink of an eye, the young genius who had challenged Wang Ting was heavily injured and sent flying after exchanging dozens of blows with Wang Ting. Damn it! You didn't use your full strength earlier. Wang Ting the Devata defeated Wang Ting a Wang Devata battle. SSS Wang S had been defeated. SSS Wang had Wang. S had Hats Kong's right? How sinister! The young man glared hatefully at Wang Ting before he left the scene. Wang Ting wasn't infuriated when she heard this, and she slowly walked away by herself before returning to the seat behind Duanling Tian. At the same time, many people who had regained their senses looked at Wang Ting and sighed. Wang Ting has just broken through a month ago, and she has such strength. She's not simple. She's not simple indeed. Her strength, even among the one-star war gods, is considered to be above average. I thought she was a pushover, but it looks like we underestimated her. However, that Situ Yufang from before was also injured by her because he was careless. If he didn't care, he would at least be able to fight to a draw with Wang Ting. Wang Ting's strength was beyond everyone's expectations. Even Duanling Tian did not expect Wang Ting to have such strength when she had just broken through. She was much stronger than the average one-star gods of war. Haha, Wang Ting, you're amazing. He genie laughed. He was happy for Wang Ting. I didn't expect you to have such strength when you've just broken through. It seems like you'll be able to enter the fourth round. I think it'll be difficult. Although Wang Ting had won a battle and was not challenged, she was not very confident. She knew the geniuses in the Devata realms were all crouching tigers and hidden dragons. Even if her strength was not bad among the one-star gods of war, it would still be difficult for her to enter the fourth round. Wang Ting, I didn't expect your strength to be on par with mine when you've just broken through. At this moment, Zhang Tianyu, who was sitting on the other side of Wang Ting, could not help but sigh. Based on Wang Ting's battle earlier, he could see her strength was on par with him. If they really fought, it would most likely end in a tie. Look, since Wang Ting showed her strength earlier, the other two who had broken through with her in the first round did not hold back at all. After Tang Sampao finished speaking, Duanling Tian and the others saw the other two, who had broken through in the first round, did not dare to be careless. They attacked with all their might. In the end, one of them defeated his opponent in 10 moves, while the other defeated his opponent in 30 moves. Both of them had successfully challenged their opponents. Among the three who had broken through in the first round, only Wang Ting had passed the challenge. Naturally, this was only the first challenge to Wang Ting. One could imagine there would be others who would challenge Wang Ting in the future. I, Sima Zhongjing from the Heaven of Wave Trace, challenged Duan Lingtian from the solitary destructive heaven. After a few more rounds, a young man dressed like a scholar stood in the middle of the field and looked at Duan Lingtian from afar before he issued a challenge to Duan Lingtian. For a moment, the group of young geniuses who were originally paying attention to the battle between the other 18 people shifted their gazes. To them, Duan Lingtian being challenged was more attractive. Currently, among the other 18 people who were fighting, the strongest one was only an outstanding one-star god of war. None of the two-star gods of war had made a move yet. Therefore, there was not much to see. Someone actually dares to challenge Duan Lingtian? Since this person dares to challenge Duan Lingtian, it means he's at least a two-star god of war. Finally, a two-star god of war has made a move. The first round of the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses was enough to determine the strength of a titled celestial emperor. Only a two-star god of war would be able to maintain a calm expression throughout the entire battle. Even the name list released by the title temple showed Duan Lingtian's strength was suspected to be at least a two-star god of war. Duan Lingtian, I didn't expect you'd be the first one to be challenged. Luo Sanpao laughed heartily. Up until now, most of the geniuses from the Devata realms and high-ranking officials from the branches of the Devata realms did not pay much attention to the challenges and duels. Most of them were chatting with the people around them and occasionally glancing at the duel. This was because they did not think there was anything worth paying attention to. At the very least, that was the case for the time being. Now that someone had challenged Duan Lingtian, the heavenly emperors and high-ranking officials from the title temple's branches stopped chatting and shifted their attention to Duan Lingtian. In just a blink of an eye, Duan Lingtian had become the center of attention. Brother Feng, I didn't expect someone to challenge junior nephew Duan so soon. Ding Fu, the heavenly emperor of the primeval heaven, looked at Feng Qingyang who was sitting opposite him and said with a smile, based on the current situation, it seems like this person is here to test junior nephew Duan. All right. Feng Qingyang nodded. At the same time, he withdrew his gaze and picked up the fragrant tea on the table. After taking a sip, he put down the teacup and lowered his head, as if he was thinking about something else. Ding Fu did not disturb him. His eyes were trained on Duan Lingtian, as he watched Duan Lingtian leave the spectator seat and enter the battle. Make your move. Under the watchful eyes of the others, Duan Lingtian looked at Sima Zhongjing, who was dressed like a scholar, and said indifferently, Duan Lingtian is a two-star god of war. Duan Lingtian, I know you're also a two-star god of war. The reason I challenged you today is because I'm curious about the true disciple of the legendary heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven. As soon as Sima Zhongjing finished speaking, flames burst out of his body. It was clear he had comprehended the law of fire. Boom! Sima Zhongjing seemed to have transformed into a fireball as he shot toward Duan Lingtian. At the same time, he merged his celestial origin energy with the fusion profundity and cast the fusion profundity. It transformed into a dragon that opened its mouth and charged toward Duan Lingtian. Swoosh! Just as Sima Zhongjing's attack was about to land on Duan Lingtian vanished from his spot. Teleportation. In the next moment, Duan Lingtian reappeared behind Sima Zhongjing. Swoosh. As soon as Duan Lingtian appeared before everyone's eyes, the sound of a sword whistling in the air rang in the air. After that, everyone saw a streak of blood spurting out from the back of Sima Zhongjing's neck. Sima Zhongjing broke out in cold sweat as he froze on the spot. After a moment, he was certain it was only a superficial wound. He hurriedly stopped the bleeding and turned around. When he looked at Duan Lingtian again, a hint of joy could be seen in his eyes. He bowed and thanked Duan Lingtian. Thank you for showing mercy. Thank you for showing mercy. Sima Zhongjing's voice was trembling at this moment. After all, killing was not prohibited in the battle of the geniuses of the Devata realms. Even if Duan Lingtian had beheaded Sima Zhongjing, no one would blame him for it. All right. Duan Lingtian nodded indifferently, and then he returned to his seat in the spectating area under the astonished gazes of the crowd. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.